At first glance, it looks like a peaceful tropical island. But this is actually a demonstration of high-level magic. Washio, a rank E professor at the Munis Inium Real Academy, is showing off a level A water spell. He's teaching a classroom full of low-tier monsters, like slimes and small octopuses, and tells them they can learn to do it too. The little red octopus is determined. It wants to grow up and turn into a human as soon as possible. The other monsters start chiming in, all wanting to marry their teacher once they change forms. Washio can only laugh nervously at the sudden marriage proposals. The little octopus looks down at its 8 suction-cupped arms. It's starting to realize just how different it is from a human. It worries that its appearance might actually make the professor feel sick. It's a heavy thought for such a small creature. Washio gives it a reassuring pat. He tells the class he has something important to share with them before the lesson ends. Classes wrap up at the Munis Inium Real Academy. Students start flooding the halls, ready to head home for the day. As Washio walks through the crowd, he accidentally bumps into a student. He's quick to apologize and check if she's all right. The girl looks completely disgusted. She complains about a gross, old man smell and runs off, leaving him standing there. Washio is visibly hurt by the comment. He doesn't think he's really that old yet. He starts sniffing himself, insisting that his clothes are clean and that he bathes every single day. He even washed everything just yesterday. He sighs, leaning against a railing as the sun begins to set. His luck doesn't seem to be getting any better. A stunning girl with a silver streak in her hair stands nearby. She's carrying a massive suitcase and seems a bit lost. Washio's eyes go wide. He's never seen someone this beautiful on campus before. He can't help but notice just how well endowed she is. He tries to shake it off and act professional. He approaches her, asking if she's having trouble finding her classroom. She looks up, her eyes locking onto his. They share a quiet moment as she studies his face. She looks like she's finally found something she's been searching for. Suddenly, she lunges forward and pulls him into a tight embrace. A huge smile spreads across her face. Washio is frozen in shock. He can't believe a total stranger is hugging him like this in the middle of the hallway. His mind starts racing, wondering if this is some kind of elaborate prank to humiliate him even further. He's genuinely confused by the affection. The students nearby start whispering immediately. They're already calling him a gross degenerate for being hugged by such a girl. She explains that she forgot her map and needs to find the head teacher's office. She's Claudia, and she's not letting go anytime soon. Washio tells her it's on the 4th floor, near the teacher's room. He gently reminds her that her student ID book should have a map inside. She kneels down and pops open the massive suitcase, rummaging through her things to find the ID book. Washio just waits patiently. She stops, looking horrified. Everything inside the suitcase is personal stuff. It seems she brought the wrong bag. Washio realizes she sent the suitcase with her books and ID to the dormitory by mistake. She's in a complete panic now. He crouches down to her level, giving her some advice. He tells her that people make mistakes when they act too hastily. He gives her a friendly pat on the head, telling her that as long as she stays calm, any mistake can be solved. A kind smile finally reaches his eyes. Claudia stares up at him, her eyes wide. It's like his words have struck a deep chord with her. He reassures her that she can just stop by the academic affairs section to get a replacement ID. She thanks him, sounding much more composed. She repeats his words back to herself. Stay calm and avoid mistakes. It seems like she's taking his advice to heart. Washio mentions that he learned that lesson during his days as an office clerk. He remembers a time he lost an entire night's worth of work because he didn't save his data. He looks away for a second, lost in the memory of that crushing defeat. It was a rough night. He quickly snaps out of it and waves goodbye, feeling a bit embarrassed for rambling about his old job. Claudia just looks at him, confused. He walks away, head down. He's just ready to get through the rest of the day without any more drama. Claudia watches him go, her expression unreadable. She doesn't take her eyes off him until he's out of sight. She wonders if he really hasn't realized who she is yet. She touches her chin, lost in thought. Inside the teacher's room, the staff is busy getting the work done. Washio is already back at his desk. Limnoa, an arrogant elf teacher, drops a thick stack of intermediate magic questionnaires on Washio's desk. He tells Washio to make sure he corrects every single one. Washio looks up and greets him politely. He's used to being dumped with the grunt work. He tries to decline, saying he has to clean the residences today. Limnoa just scoffs, telling him he needs to come up with a better excuse next time. Limnoa can't stop bragging about his own success. He's going on and on about winning tournaments and working as a top-tier consultant, clearly enjoying the sound of his own voice. Washio just smiles weakly and goes along with it. He tells the elf it would be an honor to help someone as talented as him, even if it means more work. As Limnoa walks away laughing, Washio is left standing there, completely baffled. He wonders if the guy was actually just laughing at him the whole time. Back at his desk, Washio looks absolutely drained. Meanwhile, Limnoa thinks to himself what a truly miserable man the professor has become. Night falls, and Washio is finally heading home. He's worn out, and his stomach is growling. All he wants right now is something to eat. The sounds of people partying and ordering more beer drift out from a nearby tavern. It makes his own exhaustion feel even heavier. He quickly shuts down the idea of a night out. He's completely broke and can't afford any kind of luxury right now. He trudges through a dark alleyway, heading toward his modest residence. It's been a long day of being looked down upon. As he steps inside, the housekeeper startles him. She's been waiting up to welcome him back after his late shift. She hands him some leftovers from dinner and asks a pointed question. She wonders why a guy like him doesn't just get a wife to wait for him with delicious meals. Washio just laughs it off. He tells her there's no way a low-ranking teacher like him could ever land a wife. He's pretty much given up on that dream. He kicks off his boots and enters his room. The floor is covered in discarded clothes and trash. He clearly hasn't had time to clean in a while. The state of his apartment is pretty grim. Bottles, books, and old food containers are scattered everywhere, reflecting his messy, exhausted life. He sits on the edge of his bed and starts shoveling the leftover burger into his mouth. It's not exactly a gourmet meal, but it's all he's got. He collapses onto his pillows, still chewing. He's so tired he can barely keep his eyes open. He stares up at the ceiling, the housekeeper's comment about getting a wife still echoing in his head. A small sigh escapes him. While washing off the day's grime in the shower, he starts thinking about the past. 10 years ago, he was just an ordinary office worker with no real future. He remembers being teleported to this world and hailed as a legendary hero. Back then, he spent his train rides reading quotes to find some kind of meaning in his life. His memories take him back to a ruined city. He remembers finding a small, injured monster in the middle of all that destruction. A man in a plague mask was performing experiments on the creature. Washio watched as the little thing was trapped and poked with needles. He sees the monster locked in a glass tube, its many eyes staring back at him in terror. The memory is still vivid and painful. Washio jolts awake in bed, gasping for air. He's drenched in sweat, the nightmare feeling all too real. He clutches his head, trying to calm his racing heart. The weight of his past failures still hangs over him. He sits on the edge of the bed, feeling completely dejected. He was supposed to be a hero, but in the end, he couldn't meet anyone's expectations. He looks out the window at the moon. He started a new life, but he hasn't achieved anything great. He couldn't even manage to build his own harem. He tells himself he's just an old man who knows a little bit of magic. The dreams of being a hero feel like they belong to someone else entirely. He lights a cigarette, thinking back to the fun times he spent taking care of the little octopuses. Those moments were some of the few highlights of his life. He crushes out his cigarette and decides to just go to sleep. There's no point in dwelling on things that can't be changed. The next morning, Washio arrives at the academy just in the nick of time. He's out of breath and looking even more disheveled than usual. Limnoa is already there and immediately starts sniffing the air. He mocks Washio, saying he smells like a gross old man again. Washio is confused when he hears a monster girl is transferring to the school. He's the only one who seems to be out of the loop. Limnoa is surprised that Washio doesn't know anything about them. He starts explaining that monster girls are rare and incredibly powerful. He smirks, saying he shouldn't have expected much from someone like Washio. He's clearly enjoying the chance to lecture his colleague. Monster girls are elite mutants with intelligence far superior to even the elves. They have exceptional physical abilities and look just like beautiful young human girls. Originally, they were just regular monsters, but they took on human forms for reasons that are still unknown. Very few of them even exist. Limnoa keeps looking down on Washio, telling him that a biology professor should already be well informed about this stuff. Washio can only laugh nervously in response. Washio tries to defend himself, saying he only specializes in lower-rank monsters. He's clearly out of his depth when it comes to the elite. The director steps up and explains that because of their talents, these girls are highly sought after by the government and military. Limnoa is excited about the potential prestige. The director introduces the transfer student to the faculty. He claims it's a great honor for their school to have someone so talented. It's Claudia. She introduces herself with a bright smile, telling everyone she's a Kraken species and that she's happy to meet them all. The other teachers are immediately taken by her beauty. Washio is the most shocked of all, realizing she's the same girl who hugged him yesterday. The director says they'll conduct reviews to help her pick the right teacher, but Claudia interrupts him. She announces she's already decided exactly who her professor will be. Claudia turns away from the director and looks toward the line of teachers. While Limnoa watches with a stern and suspicious gaze, Washio stands frozen in the background, still reeling from the shock of seeing the girl from the island here at the academy. She steps closer, her voice barely a whisper as she says, "Long time no see." Suddenly, she lunges forward and wraps her massive tentacles around him in a crushing hug. Limnoa can only watch in utter disgust and shock as the monster girl shows such bold affection. Washio is frozen in place, his mind racing. He tries to recall any octopus he's known, but only a tiny, scribbled-looking creature comes to mind. She leans in, her face inches from his. "Washio-sensei," she says, her voice full of warmth and recognition. A sudden, vivid memory of a laboratory and an explosion flashes through his mind. He remembers seeing a small creature in a tank amidst the chaos of war. The realization hits him like a ton of bricks. This beautiful girl is the same creature he once rescued years ago when he was still a hero. He recalls the moment he first reached out to that small, frightened creature, offering it a chance at life in a world of ruins. Claudia grips his shirt, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "That time, you truly saved my life," she whispers. She looks up at him with a radiant, joyous smile, her tentacles waving happily. "And now look, I've grown into a monster girl just to find you." The scene shifts to the next day. Washio is late for work again, sprinting through the town while shouting in panic as he races toward the academy. He finally reaches the academy gates, panting and disheveled. A student passes by and gives him a polite greeting, but he's still in a daze from the previous day's revelation. His heart nearly stops when he sees Claudia standing right in the middle of the schoolyard, waving her arms and cheering for him at the top of her lungs, making it clear to everyone exactly who she's here for. Washio greets Claudia for the day, only for her to turn around and offer him a ride to the academy. Before he can even answer, her tentacles snatch him up and they go flying through the air. It turns out a kraken is a lot faster than walking, and Washio actually makes it to school early for the first time in a month. He looks at her with a soft smile, still wrapping his head around the fact that he's now the teacher for the little creature he saved years ago. Seeing her so happy, he laughs about how much she's grown since she was just a tiny octopus. But the arrogant Limnoa isn't thrilled, complaining to the director that their past connection makes this arrangement unfair. The director is totally on board, though, giving a cheerful double thumbs up to seal the deal. As they turn to leave, Limnoa calls out for them to wait a second. He puts on his best condescending smirk, arguing that a high-ranking elite like himself is a much better fit for her than some ranky nobody. Claudia doesn't back down, reminding him that it's plain rude to judge people based on their rank. Washio looks like he's having a minor panic attack after pissing off one of the elite professors. Claudia notices the look on his face, but he quickly tries to play it off. He sets down a black folder on the desk. Claudia is having a blast, laughing about how much she loves being in class. He hands her a career form, wondering what she's planning for her future. She knows everyone expects her to become a high-ranking officer just because of what she is. Her fist clenches at the thought of it. She looks down at the desk, feeling like her path has already been decided by everyone else. Even the other students are already trying to use her for a recommendation to the King's Department. The pressure is clearly getting to her. Washio admits that even the other faculty members are saying the same thing about her potential. She wonders if she's really obligated to live up to everyone's expectations. The professor can't even look her in the eye. He tells her he's not the right person for advice, and she should go find a better teacher. That wasn't exactly the support she was looking for. He just waves her off, telling her not to stress about it. She's left alone at the desk, staring at the form that's supposed to define her life. Students shuffle through the halls as the school day continues. Later in the cafeteria, Claudia asks Washio if a couple of sandwiches are really enough for lunch. He admits he's flat broke, but insists that skipping meals is bad for your health. Suddenly, her mood flips, and she excitedly shows him that she's already filled out the form. Washio is caught off guard by the sudden energy shift. Professor Limnoa, however, is absolutely losing it. He grabs Claudia's shoulder and tells her she's wasting her talent by settling for an ordinary career. She looks like she's about 2 seconds away from snapping. Washio finally steps in and tells the elf to back off. He tells Limnoa that a real teacher shouldn't ignore what their students actually want. Limnoa just gets more insulted, claiming the world would suffer if he isn't her mentor. The students start whispering as they watch the two teachers go at it. The elf insists that a talented student like her belongs with a high-ranked teacher like him. For a second, Washio starts to believe him, thinking he really isn't good enough. That's when one of Claudia's tentacles shoots out and wraps around Limnoa's neck. She makes it very clear that he needs to leave her teacher alone. She points right at him, declaring that Washio has been supporting her dreams since the very beginning. A nostalgic smile crosses her face as she remembers a specific moment from her past. The whole cafeteria goes silent as she stands her ground. Limnoa is in total shock that he's being rejected for a low-ranked teacher. Claudia explains that Washio's advice was what gave her the strength to find her own path. She thinks back to when she was just a small octopus wishing she could be human. Even then, the young professor was the only one who truly cared. He smiled at his class and told them he wanted to share a lesson he really believed in. He picked her up and told her the 2 words that changed everything: know yourself. Washio finishes his lesson by telling the small monsters to find their own strengths instead of being jealous of others. The little octopus listens intently, taking every word to heart. A younger Washio gives a thumbs up, promising his full support to anyone willing to work for their dreams. Back in the present, Claudia looks at him with pure admiration, cherishing the words that helped her evolve into a monster girl. She's completely realized her own potential now. She clings to Washio's arm, making it clear to the fuming Limnoa that he's the only teacher she'll ever accept. The hallway is buzzing as everyone watches the drama unfold between the faculty. The students start taking sides, gossiping about how Limnoa is always acting like he's perfect while Washio is just a harmless old guy. To everyone's shock, the high and mighty Limnoa starts tearing up right then and there. He sprints down the hallway in tears, shouting a classic villain threat about remembering this. Once he's gone, Claudia casually suggests they go grab some lunch. Washio looks down at her, amazed at how much the tiny octopus he saved has actually grown. As they walk, he feels a bit guilty for forgetting the very lesson that meant so much to her. Claudia gives him a playful wink, repeating the know yourself mantra back to him. It hits him pretty hard. He never expected his own advice to find its way back to him 20 years later. A small, genuine smile finally breaks across his face. He starts to think there might be some perks to this whole teaching thing after all. But that thought dies immediately when he has to ask Claudia to lend him some cash for lunch. In biology class, he introduces her as his new assistant, warning the class that her cute looks are deceptive. She proves his point immediately by casually smashing a boulder with a single tentacle flick. The biology room becomes the most popular place on campus almost overnight. The students are in awe of her power, realizing they definitely shouldn't mess with her. Washio stays humble as always, apologizing for his boring lessons, though Claudia is just happy to be there. She tells him straight up that being with him makes the whole thing worth it. She even helps out with the teaching, using her tentacles to reach heights he can't. He's genuinely impressed by her reach, though she admits she's hitting her limit. She starts showing off how flexible and useful her extra limbs really are. Washio isn't quite sure where this is going as a tentacle starts snaking around his neck. It turns out she has a very specific use in mind for him. He lets out a muffled scream as she begins a high-pressure massage that feels more like a wrestling match. She mentions that she actually worked as a professional masseur and had a killer reputation. The tentacle starts working on his back with terrifying efficiency. She leans in with a look that says she's got more than just a back rub on her mind. She asks if he wants a different kind of massage while her tentacles get uncomfortably close. Then she just laughs it off, telling him she was only joking about the weird stuff. She teases him about being 16 and needing to practice her charms, leaving him a blushing mess. She gets right in his face to ask if she was successfully sexy, which he clearly can't handle. He desperately tries to redirect her attention, pointing out that the next class is starting any second. She pouts, clearly wanting more one-on-one time with her favorite teacher. She finally waves goodbye and heads off to get some lunch for herself. As soon as she's gone, Washio collapses onto his desk, completely drained of energy. He lies there staring into space, wondering why his heart won't stop racing. Claudia walks off with a sigh, realizing that trying to be seductive is much more exhausting than she expected. As Washio panics about being late for his next duty, a grand carriage comes to a halt at the academy entrance. A stunning young woman with long black hair and an air of mystery steps out into the light. Clad in a frilly white dress, she wonders aloud if a certain someone will still remember her name. Carrying a small briefcase and adjusting her sun hat, the mysterious girl sets off into the school grounds to find Washio-sensei. That night, the poor professor is plagued by vivid nightmares, unable to escape the gross and fishy memory of Claudia's intense physical affection. Washio is finally on his day off, and he's soaking up every second of it. He stretches out his stiff back, noting that a miracle like this only happens once a year. Suddenly, someone grabs him from behind, getting way too close for comfort. It's a beautiful girl in a straw hat, telling him it's been way too long. Arya giggles, noting that she's changed quite a bit since they last met. She starts lifting her skirt, catching him completely off guard. Huge spider legs sprout out as she reveals she's the little spider he saved years ago. They head to a small tavern, and Arya is shocked by how tiny and cramped the place is. She doesn't hold back, calling the chandelier a complete wreck. The waiter tries to be polite, but Washio is already apologizing for her bluntness. The waiter offers to bring out something special since it's the teacher's first time bringing a date. Arya dives right in, taking a massive bite of the skewer. Her face lights up. Turns out the meat is dry and delicious all at once. The other customers can't look away, while Washio just looks embarrassed. He begs her to stop insulting the establishment while they're still eating. She officially introduces herself as Arya, leaving the nickname Little Spider in the past. Washio smiles, thinking about how that shy little creature grew into a monster girl. Arya admits those early days were rough, but his support changed everything. She says his words were her saving grace, but he has no clue what she's talking about. She wonders what kind of magic he's teaching his students these days. He breaks it to her that he's actually just a biology teacher now. He takes a drink, explaining that things aren't quite the way they used to be. Arya stares at him, her eyes reflecting a deep, unwavering admiration. She asks if he remembers a certain small octopus from his past. Washio is stunned to find out that Claudia, his new student, was also one of his old rescues. Arya celebrates the news by ordering the most expensive stuff on the menu and another round of beer. The bill is huge, but Washio insists on paying even if it means eating bread for a week. He offers to walk her home, but Arya's personal carriage has already arrived. He's surprised to see how rich she's become as she leans in for one last moment. She tells him how happy she was to see him today, a soft smile on her face. Washio waves goodbye as the sun sets, wishing her a good night. Arya settles into her seat as the carriage rattles away, her spider legs finally relaxing. She's glowing with joy, having finally fulfilled her dream of hugging him with human hands. Meanwhile, Washio heads home, feeling genuinely happy that Claudia has grown up so well. Arya realizes he was talking about an octopus the whole time and wonders if he'll ever understand a lady's heart. She looks down at a gift box, realizing she completely forgot to give it to him. Back at the academy, Claudia is looking for her teacher so they can head home together. Her mood shifts instantly when she hears he left with a beautiful black-haired girl. Arya considers going back, but decides she'll just give him the present in class tomorrow. Her thoughts are cut short by the frantic ringing of bells and shouts about a fire. Her eyes widen as she sees the local church engulfed in thick, black smoke. People are screaming and running for water as the blaze quickly spirals out of control. People are screaming outside the burning church, desperate for help. A nun begs the onlookers to save a child trapped inside, but the flames are too intense. Arya hears the cries and decides to step in, ignoring the danger. She tells the panicking crowd to leave it to her as she adjusts her hat. Someone shouts for her to be careful, but she's already heading straight for the inferno. With a determined look, Arya disappears into the thick black smoke. Inside, the heat is overwhelming as she searches through the crumbling ruins. She's coughing from the fumes, knowing she has to find the child before it's too late. The fire roars all around her, making every step a gamble. Arya calls out, desperately trying to find any sign of life in the chaos. She spots the child slumped on the floor, barely conscious. Gasping for air, she rushes over and scoots her way through the wreckage. Arya prepares to use her water magic to clear a path, but she's worried about the child's safety. She knows that at this distance, her magic could seriously injure him. Suddenly, Washio appears and takes charge, reaching out his hand. He unleashes a massive amount of energy, revealing his true nature as a high-ranking magician. He summons World Over Water, a gargantuan spectral entity that looms over the church. Arya is in awe, realizing that even after 20 years, his power is still absolutely tremendous. Washio plays it cool, reminding himself that he's just a tired biology teacher with a stiff shoulder. A torrent of water erupts, flooding the building and instantly extinguishing the fire. The onlookers are stunned into silence as the entire church is surrounded by a massive pool of water. This reminds Arya of the time she first met him, back when he was acting as a simple baker. In that memory, a young girl named Claudia points in awe at a fish swimming in the magical water. Young Arya had emerged from the flames back then too, carrying a child safely on her back. The crowd from years ago erupted in cheers as they realized she had actually made it out alive. She told the grateful adults to take the boy to a doctor for a proper checkup. The nun from the past was moved to tears, thanking her for her incredible bravery. People were amazed, noting that such powerful magic was exactly what they expected from a monster girl. Even as a child, Arya got flustered by all the sudden attention. One of the men noted that monster girls really are something special. Baker Washio had approached her with a gentle smile, asking if she could help him with one more thing. He saw how exhausted she was and offered a kind word to settle her nerves. He pointed out the magical water dripping from the roof and the fish she'd accidentally summoned. Young Claudia was fascinated, asking if the fish were also made from magic. Arya watched as he pulled out a beautiful wreath of flowers he'd made. Baker Washio told them not to worry, handing the gift over with a kind expression. Claudia beamed, realizing that magic could actually give happiness to people. He then turned his attention to the little spider, telling her to come closer. He placed a flower wreath on her head, simply telling her to take it. The tiny spider was confused, asking why he was always giving her flowers when she didn't ask. Washio explained that he wanted to teach her things that will actually be useful throughout her life. He wants her to understand that true power lies in how you treat others. The secret to living is giving, he tells her, pointing a finger for emphasis. He explains that giving anything, flowers, knowledge, or just a smile, is what makes life truly fulfilling. The little spider girl listens intently, as he says these lessons will eventually define her life's meaning. Inspired, she decides she wants to do the same, and he happily suggests they start by sharing flowers with others. Back in the present, Arya watches Washio walk away, thinking about how he still lives by those same words. In the academy halls, students are buzzing with rumors about a monster girl who heroically saved the church from a fire. Claudia listens with interest, noting that the news of the rescue has already spread throughout the school. Arya remains humble, telling Claudia that she wasn't the one who saved the day. It was actually Washio-sensei. Claudia is disappointed she missed out, wishing she could have seen Washio-sensei's magic in action again. Arya describes the incredible summon she saw, noting that the magical guardian looked even more powerful than before. Washio approaches the two girls, wondering if they were reminiscing about their childhood memories. Arya gives him a respectful bow, thanking him once more for helping her become the monster girl she is today. She hands him a small, wrapped gift as a token of her deep gratitude for his constant support. With a warm and gentle smile, she reminds him of his own teaching, that living is giving. Claudia, feeling a bit left out, asks if she could be the one to open the package, and Washio gives her his permission. Inside, they find a beautiful spiderweb tie clip, which Washio immediately and proudly attaches to his tie. Arya is loving the new look, telling Washio that spiderweb tie was practically made for him. The girls start bickering over whether an octopus or spider design is better, while the other students gossip about the teacher being a bit too close with his class. Arya is already looking ahead, thinking about her future career in the Magic Guard. Washio is impressed by her stats, admitting her magic skills are way above the average students. He promises to do whatever he can to help her succeed, but he has to ask her to keep the hugs to a minimum in public. Still, he can't help but feel a bit of pride knowing both his students are actually taking their future seriously. Nearby, other students are bragging about how they're definitely going to win the upcoming spring battles. They're all betting on Lemnoa's group to take the top spot again, since they haven't lost a single fight in 5 years. Washio hears the commotion but decides it's none of his business. He's got enough to deal with. Arya, meanwhile, is clarifying some monster biology to Claudia. Just because she's a spider doesn't mean she actually wants to eat worms. Claudia's got her own goals too. She wants to be a teacher, just like Washio, and bridge the gap between humans and monsters. Arya thinks it's a great dream, giving her friend a rare, genuine smile. The peaceful moment is broken when some students notice a really pleasant scent drifting through the air. Suddenly, a loud voice calls out to the new first years from above. An elite-looking student appears out of nowhere, asking the girls if they want to join his group. Arya and Claudia just stare back, looking completely unimpressed by the sudden interruption. The guy introduces himself as Frederick and starts striking some pretty dramatic poses while his underlings do the same. He explains that they're basically a high-tier study group that helps members level up their magic. Arya and Claudia aren't exactly jumping at the chance, wondering if this is even worth their time. Frederick keeps pushing, telling them they're too elite to be wasting their potential and promising he can make them way stronger. He gives them a charming smile, waiting for the yes he's clearly expecting. Instead, Arya just gives him a flat no, not interested in whatever he's selling. She tells him off for trying to decide what's best for others without even asking. She adds that she's not even a fan of big social groups, and honestly doesn't think her magic is that special anyway. Frederick doesn't take rejection well, and decides a duel is the only way to settle things. He immediately starts chanting, summoning a massive wave of water to intimidate them. But Claudia doesn't even break a sweat, effortlessly countering the attack as if it was nothing. Frederick's eyes go wide. He definitely wasn't expecting a freshman to shut him down that fast. He tries to play it cool by clapping, saying he expected nothing less from a rare monster girl. Aria's already over it, reminding him they already said no and telling him to quit the flashy magic show. But Frederick isn't done. He says he needs to give them a little more motivation and starts tapping into some darker power. This is exactly what Lim Noah was teaching in class, how high-level mages can manifest their power as a physical image. It's a phenomenon where your inner strength takes a visible form right out of your shadow. Frederick lets it loose, and a massive, snarling werewolf towers over the courtyard. The size and shape of these things are supposed to be a direct reflection of how much mana the caster actually has. The werewolf looms behind Frederick, looking ready to tear anything apart on command. He proudly shows off his spirit animal, thinking this is going to be the thing that finally wins them over. He looks Arya right in the eye, smugly asking if she's finally feeling the pressure. Back in the lecture hall, they're taught that these spirits are the literal materialization of a user's soul. Basically, if your spirit is a mouse, you're weak. If it's a giant cat, you're top tier, and you can tell a person's rank just by looking. The students watching from the balconies are amazed at how much Frederick's wolf has grown since the last term. But Arya just stares at the big dog, looking more bored than threatened. Arya isn't buying the hype, judging Frederick's spirit wolf as nothing more than a mid-tier B rank at best. Frederick tells her not to jump to conclusions before he shows off his real magic, chanting a fancy incantation to summon a massive ice dagger. The ground literally shatters under the weight as the giant ice shard comes crashing down. But it doesn't even touch them. Claudia's tentacles shoot out, catching the attack effortlessly while shielding Arya. Frederick has the nerve to ask if they were surprised by the size, completely oblivious to how bored Arya looks. He starts bragging about his perfect spell recitation and how he can pull off A-rank magic like it's nothing. His little fan club chimes in, reminding everyone that their leader, Lim Noah, can triple his power with just a few words. Feeling full of himself, Frederick offers his hand again, asking if they're finally ready to join his elite squad. The students watching are actually starting to root for the girls, admitting that even Frederick looks weak compared to a monster girl's raw strength. Claudia doesn't look impressed. She looks like she's just wasted 5 minutes of her life. She tells him straight up that his elite magic looks like child's play compared to what Washio can do. With a cheerful smile, she turns him down cold, saying she'd much rather learn from a real pro like Washio. That hits Frederick's ego hard, and he immediately starts trashing Washio, calling him a boring, useless old man. He asks if they only picked him because they owe him some kind of favor, but he doesn't see the dangerous look in Arya's eyes. He keeps digging his own grave, calling Washio creepy and claiming he probably threatened them into joining his class. Just as he finishes his insult, the library tower behind him suddenly takes a direct hit. A massive explosion rocks the academy, sending smoke and debris flying everywhere. Claudia is shaking with rage, telling him that everyone in Lim Noah's faction is trash for making fun of her teacher. She screams out how much she hates him, her tentacles lashing out with enough force to level the whole courtyard. The other students are terrified, wondering if a freshman just casually blew up a whole building with one outburst. Frederick is losing his mind, calling her monster features vulgar while backing away in terror. Arya isn't letting him off either. She summons a massive, terrifying skeletal shadow to loom over him, demanding a formal apology. Frederick finally realizes he's messed with the wrong girls as he stares up at the literal embodiment of his nightmare. In the background, the library tower is nothing but a smoking ruin. He starts sobbing, torn between his fear of the creepy monster parts and how beautiful the girls actually are. Arya and Claudia aren't here for his tears. They loom over him, waiting for that apology. He's completely broken, stuttering about how insane their power actually is. Arya leans in close, giving him a glare that could freeze fire as she tells him to say sorry right now. The crowd is stunned in his silence, still trying to process that the school library was just deleted from a map. Washio finally makes it to the scene, looking like his heart just stopped when he sees the wreckage. He just stands there in shock, staring at what used to be a tower. Lim Noah is right behind him, furious and demanding to know which student was responsible for this disaster. Claudia immediately points the finger at Frederick, saying he's the one who started the fight. But instead of defending himself, Frederick suddenly blushes and grabs Claudia's hands, confessing his love right then and there. He's totally mesmerized by her explosive magic, acting like he's just found his soulmate in the middle of a war zone. He notices her limiting ring and realizes she's this strong without even trying, which only makes him fall harder. He decides right then that it's fate and asks her to be his fiancée on the spot. Claudia looks like she wants to vomit, absolutely horrified by the sudden marriage proposal. Washio has to step in and break it up, telling them that lovers' quarrels don't excuse blowing up school property. Limnoa takes the chance to mock Washio again, telling him he clearly has no control over his own students. Washio tries to defend them with a nervous laugh, insisting they're good girls who probably just had a bad day. He ends up bowing and apologizing to Limnoa, admitting he probably needs to be way stricter from now on. Limnoa can't help but twist the knife, telling Washio that if the girls are too much for him to handle, he'd be more than happy to take them off his hands. Washio is left sweating, recognizing that Limnoa is persistent, though he tries to brush it off as a virtue. Washio-sensei looks over the notes, confirming that Frederick attacked first and Claudia was just defending herself. Frederick is suddenly all business, claiming he's deeply reflected on his actions and realizes how reckless he was. Arya is just confused by his sudden change in tone. Washio tries to keep the peace, reminding Frederick that since he's in Limnoa's group, he needs to be more careful, while Claudia is just horrified by the guy. Frederick decides he's done with the lecture and excuses himself, but not before giving Claudia one last look. He leans in close to Claudia, calling her name softly, as if they're already close. He promises to save her from Washio's supposed brainwashing, so they can finally be together, but Claudia just wants him to get lost. He turns his attention to Arya next, bluntly stating he could never love a spider like her, which sends her temper through the roof. Even so, he generously invites her to join his faction, but Arya rejects him on the spot, telling him he's just too irritating. Washio watches the whole exchange, sighing about the energy of youth while the girls continue to fume. Claudia finally snaps, asking Frederick if he's blind, while Arya is just speechless at the guy's ego. Washio tries to play the nice guy, suggesting that maybe a handsome guy like Frederick is a better match for them than an old man like himself. Claudia is having none of it, telling Washio she absolutely hates that part of him. She gets right in Washio's personal space, demanding a date after classes are over to make up for his insensitive comment. As Frederick walks away without an apology, the other students look on, including a mysterious blonde girl who seems to be observing everything. Washio brings Arya and Claudia into the student counseling room for a little chat. He's laying down a law, strictly banning the use of magic outside of class hours. Arya isn't taking him seriously at all. She leans in with a wink and tells him that once the school day is over, it's officially date time. She drags him straight to the shopping district and tries on a fancy new dress, posing to see if he thinks she looks cute. The outfit is a bit much for poor Washio. He's stumbling over his words while trying to stay composed and not look too closely. Claudia steps out next in a long, elegant dress. She's also looking for some validation from her favorite teacher. The local schoolgirls think they look adorable, and Washio eventually gives in and agrees that they both look great. Arya isn't done yet, holding up a couple of different outfits to get his opinion on which color suits are best. Washio is already losing steam. He tells her that honestly, she'd look good in either of them. That wasn't the enthusiastic answer she wanted. Arya starts pouting, feeling like he's just trying to rush her through the shopping trip. The mood shifts when they get to the register. The total comes out to a staggering 93,000, and Washio starts sweating. He desperately asks if they can do a payment plan, but the clerk isn't having it. Arya and Claudia just watch him struggle in silence. On the way back, Arya asks Claudia why she's still hanging around. Claudia makes it clear she's not letting her rival have him all to herself. Arya's jealousy is starting to flare up. She's definitely not in a sharing mood today. It's official. These two legendary monster girls have completely attached themselves to the school's lowest-ranked teacher. The other students are baffled. They can't figure out why elite monsters like them are following a rank in nobody. Arya and Claudia aren't happy about the gossip. They glare at the crowd, ready to defend Washio's reputation. Arya decides they need a mood booster and suggests they go grab some crepes. She feeds him a bite herself, much to Claudia's annoyance. She's marking her territory early. They run into an old man from the local tavern who spots them and calls out to his old buddy, Washio-chan. He starts joking about Washio being popular with the students. He also mentions seeing him with a mysterious black-haired girl recently. The old man gets a bit more serious, telling Washio that staying at rank E for his whole career is just pathetic. Washio just smiles through the lecture. He thinks of Limnoa, a colleague who's the same rank but seems a world away in terms of status. Washio is perfectly happy being at the bottom. No status means no high-stakes responsibilities, which is his dream life. The old man laughs, remembering how hungry for promotion he used to be when he was younger. The girls hang back, realizing that it's not just the school that looks down on Washio, but the entire town. Claudia decides they need to take action. She turns to Arya and tells her she's got a big proposal. They tell Washio to wait over there while they have a private girls-only discussion. They agree that they need to get Washio promoted so he can actually afford to live and support a household. Before he can ask what's going on, the two of them suddenly dash off to handle an urgent matter. Washio is left behind with his tavern friend, who suggests they just go get a drink since he's free now. Hours later, the campus is quiet. Washio is sitting outside alone, eating a late-night snack. He starts to wonder where the girls disappeared to. Right then, he hears a familiar voice calling his name. Claudia walks up, looking very official and very determined. She's clearly been busy. She pulls out some paperwork and tells him that she needs his signature immediately. He looks at the document and sees it's an application to form the Washio faction. Washio is beyond confused. He has no desire to lead a faction or take on that kind of headache. Claudia isn't backing down. She wants to show the world that he's not the useless teacher everyone thinks he is. He tells her it's a nice thought, but ranky teachers aren't even allowed to oversee a faction. Claudia points to the checklist she's prepared. She somehow managed to get all the requirements met, including his promotion. Washio is stunned. He's been stuck at the bottom for 20 years, and now he's suddenly moving up to rank D? It turns out she threatened to quit the school if the director didn't approve it. The poor man was too scared to lose a star student. Washio sighs, realizing there's no way out of this. He takes the pen and gets ready to sign his life away. Washio is still trying to talk them out of it. He thinks it would be way better if they just didn't create a brand new faction. He tries to reason with them, saying they can learn plenty of magic from the factions that already exist and deepen their knowledge by interacting with more students. He even suggests they just join the Rimnoa faction. After all, Julius Frederick has been enthusiastically trying to recruit them lately. He notes that despite their extreme aversion to the group, the leadership there is actually top tier. Washio continues his praise, calling the other teacher exceptional and amazing, hoping they'll just move on from his own case. Claudia isn't hearing any of it. She looks down, her face flushed with frustration that he doesn't value himself more than a lowly assistant. Seeing her reaction, Washio starts to sweat. He didn't expect his logical argument to make her this visibly upset. She can't believe that instead of fighting his unfair E-rank evaluation, he just chooses to accept it and stay at the bottom of the hierarchy. She tells him straight up that she's really frustrated with how little he thinks of himself after everything he's done. She isn't interested in his apologies. She just wants him to pick up the pen and sign the application paper already. Washio hesitates, his mind wandering back to the dark and lonely places where he first encountered his students. He closes his eyes, feeling the weight of their expectations pressing down on him. Suddenly, Arya bursts into the room, shouting his name and waving a piece of paper. She says it looks urgent and was just delivered to his desk. Washio takes the letter, wondering if it's some official business from the school or maybe something from his landlord. His heart sinks as he reads. The landlord is getting too old and is handing management over to his son, who wants Washio gone by tomorrow morning. The reality of the situation hits him hard. He's about to turn 50, and now he's going to be completely homeless in less than 24 hours. He buries his face in his hands, nearly in tears at his sudden and overwhelming misfortune. Claudia softens her tone, telling him it doesn't matter if he's only signing the papers because he needs a place to sleep. She just wants to be able to learn from him, and she's more than willing to use his housing crisis to make that dream happen. Her persistence finally wins him over. He figures he doesn't have much of a choice if he wants to keep a roof over his head. He tries to look at the bright side. A promotion to rank D means a pay raise and, most importantly, a free dormitory room at the academy. He puts pen to paper, watched closely by his two most devoted and terrifyingly intense students. He's so stressed that his hand is practically shaking as he scribbles his name down on the line. The girls lean in to check the signature and immediately realize something is wrong. In his panic, he completely misspelled his own name as Watsuo. Deep within the academy, a forgotten machine hums to life. Alice sits motionless in a capsule, her magical energy reserves reaching critical levels. Back in the present, the group has taken the application to the director's office, hoping for a quick approval. The director doesn't even hesitate. He gives them a cheerful smile and tells them the application is officially denied. Claudia is absolutely fuming. She demands to know why, since they've clearly met every single requirement on the list. The director explains that the problem isn't their rank, but that the Academy's spare magic reactor was recently destroyed. He goes on a long explanation about how different factions explore magic in their own ways, each requiring a stable power source. Washio is left wondering what they're supposed to do now that their plan has hit a massive bureaucratic brick wall. He's getting desperate. If the faction doesn't get approved immediately, he's going to be an old man living in a cardboard box. That's when Julius strolls into the office, acting like he owns the place. He greets Claudia with a wink and calls her honey. Claudia is visibly repulsed, telling him to stop calling her that immediately. Julius just keeps up the fake charming act, ignoring her discomfort. He points out that the tower Claudia leveled during her duel was actually where the Academy's only other magic reactor was kept. Since it's gone, he helpfully suggests they head to the notorious Tower of Ghosts to find a replacement. The mere mention of the tower sends a chill down Washio's spine. He's already trembling just thinking about ghosts. Claudia doesn't care about spooky stories. She claps her hands together and says they should get going right away. Washio is still trying to protest, but Claudia reminds him that since she broke the old reactor, they're all responsible for finding a new one. They arrive at the base of the crumbling, eerie tower. Washio is absolutely terrified, admitting that he's always hated ghosts. They push open the heavy front door. Arya tells them to hurry up so they can find a reactor and get out before something pops out. As they step into the dark hallway, the group prepares themselves for whatever ancient traps or spirits might be waiting for them. Julius reports to his mentor, Limnoa, confirming that he has successfully manipulated Washio and the monster girls into entering the dangerous tower, just as planned. Limnoa is pleased with the report, thanking Julius and looking forward to the moment he can finally claim the powerful girls for his own elite faction. He's already imagining the perfect scenario, Washio cowering in terror while Limnoa arrives in a flash of brilliance to save the day and win over the girls' hearts. Julius cheers on his sensei's arrogant scheme, convinced that this rescue is the only way to break the supposed brainwashing Washio has over the girls. The two of them strike a theatrical pose, reciting the first two elitist principles of the Rimnoa faction, intelligence and wealth. They finish their chant with the final pillar of their group, pride, fully confident that their victory over the lowly assistant teacher is guaranteed. Limnoa is busy plotting with his subordinate, laughing about how he's going to school these monster girls on how his faction operates. He's got a nasty smirk on his face, confident that he'll be the one in charge of them soon. Washio leads Arya and Claudia toward the Tower of Ghosts, an old, crumbling mess of a building. Suddenly, Claudia starts acting weird, breathing heavy and leaning right into him. She shoves her face into his chest, making some pretty strange sounds while she's at it. Washio is definitely feeling the pressure. He's a bit overwhelmed by how soft she is. Arya just sighs at the display, telling Washio it's fine if he wants to touch her too. They finally snap out of it and head toward the dark entrance of the tower. The interior is a total wreck, looking dark and creepy even with the sun out. Claudia is clinging to his arm for dear life, admitting she's straight up terrified of monsters and ghosts. They stop dead in their tracks when a door starts creaking open all by itself. A massive, shadowy ghost looms behind them, and it's enough to make them all scream. They bolt down the hallway, try to put as much distance between them and the shadow as possible. A mechanical click sounds underfoot as they trigger some kind of trap. The floor just drops out from under them, sending everyone into a freefall. Arya tries to snag them with her webs, but they still end up tumbling down into the darkness. They land in a heap on the floor, and the trapdoor above slams shut, locking them in. Claudia is still acting all flushed and weird, saying she feels a little out of it. She says she can't control herself. Her monster instinct is taking over. Washio is completely confused, wondering what on earth she's talking about. He tries to tell her to back off, but she's not listening at all. She drops a massive bombshell, saying it doesn't matter because they'll eventually be married anyway. The guy nearly chokes. Married? He begs her to calm down, but she's on a mission. Just as things are getting super awkward, a crack starts spreading across the wall. The structure gives way, and they go crashing through the floor once again. They land in a dusty heap in a secret, underground chamber. Washio rubs his head, checking if Claudia is okay as they look around the room. In the center of the lab, they spot a massive glass capsule with a girl inside. Arya gets closer, noticing it's some kind of high-tech pod housing a sleeping girl. A system warning pops up. The automaton's activity is halted, and it's set to explode in 60 seconds. The timer starts ticking down from 60, and they realize they're in deep trouble. The exit is sealed tight. They're stuck in a room with a ticking bomb. Washio fruitlessly bangs on the door, but it won't budge an inch. Arya tells him to keep his cool while she tries to figure out a way to stop the countdown. She finds an instruction manual nearby that might hold the key. It's a magic book filled with weird diagrams and ancient-looking text. Washio stares at the book, trying to wrap his head around how to disarm the thing. With only seconds left, he approaches the capsule and places his hand on the glass. He lets his magic flow into the machine, hoping he's doing this right. The timer stops just in time, and the system starts updating to recognize him as the new master. Claudia is ecstatic, cheering for the Golden Eagle, a name Washio hasn't heard in ages. Arya is still eyeing that book, wondering what kind of secret magic he just pulled off. Washio stares at the book, realizing it's an ancient magical artifact. He's never seen one in person before, and he knows it's likely packed with long-lost spells. Arya points out that even though most of it is gibberish without analysis, he managed to read a few words just a moment ago. Washio is genuinely surprised by that. She leans in close, her eyes wide with excitement. She's clearly onto something. She suggests they make this magical book the official study object for their new Washio faction. It's the perfect goal to legitimize their group. Washio is still wrapping his head around the idea of a magic book faction when he hears a faint noise. The girl in the capsule, Alice, is slowly opening her eyes. The three of them stand there, completely frozen. Alice speaks with a hollow, robotic voice, asking if they've seen her master. She's been asleep for a very long time. Now that she's fully awake, she apologizes for being out so long and says she needs to restart her master's research immediately. She recognizes the handwriting on the note Washio is holding. It belongs to her former master. The note reveals that her master didn't have much time left and was too weak to keep using the grimoire. He wanted to pass the torch to someone new. Alice stares at the paper, absorbing the reality that her mission must continue with a new master. Washio offers to unlock the door so she can go back home, but Arya stops him, asking her to come with him instead. Alice's expression is blank. She says that if her master isn't there, she has no reason to exist. She'll just go back to sleep until the real master appears. Arya is clearly moved, telling Washio how sad it is. She asks if he'll step up and be her new master. Washio just sighs, saying he can't do anything about it. Arya reminds him that he's got plenty of magic to spare, but Washio insists he's just a simple biology teacher who wants a quiet life. He looks away, his eyes full of conflict. He's already got his hands full with these two. The ghost of her master's message lingers in the air. He wanted someone to add new pages to the book alongside Alice. That was her whole purpose. Washio closes his eyes, trying to block out the weight of the responsibility being thrust upon him. Arya isn't letting it go. She asks him one more time if he's really going to leave a girl like that behind. Washio turns his back on her, but the silence between them is heavy with unspoken expectations. Alice is back in her capsule, drifting back toward a sleep that might last centuries. Washio looks at her, the gears in his head turning. The letter from the previous master mentions that whoever finds her must be a talented, young individual. Washio dryly notes that since there's no age limit, he's technically out. The black leather grimoire is one of 7 ancient artifacts, and Alice is its guardian. Her life is tied to it. Her master explains that he simply didn't have the strength to keep the book active anymore. It's a burden that needs a powerful soul. The note says he has no regrets. The days he spent researching magic with Alice were the best of his life. He woke up excited every single day. He's passing the pen to the next master. He wants Alice to have a future filled with new discoveries and companionship. Washio looks at the book in his hand, realizing it's far more than just a powerful weapon. It's a legacy. He thinks to himself that these artifacts are way too much for a normal teacher. Arya is watching him closely, her own eyes watering. She's completely caught up in the story of Alice and her master. Alice has her eyes closed again, her expression as peaceful as if she's just taking a nap. Arya looks at the floor, clearly devastated. She can't stand the idea of Alice being alone forever in this dark tower. She begs Washio to reconsider, pleading for him to save her. She says it's a shame for Alice to wake up only to fall right back into a lonely slumber. Arya holds her hands together, practically praying that he'll reach out and help her, just like he helped her and Claudia. Washio is silent, but Arya's words are clearly hitting home. To her, he's still the same kind, reliable man she's always known. Washio finally cracks a bitter smile. He thinks it's pathetic that he needs a student to push him into doing the right thing. He's clearly decided. He tells Arya he gets it, and she lights up immediately. She knew he wouldn't turn his back on someone in need. He apologizes for being such a clumsy, indecisive teacher. It's a rare moment of vulnerability for him. Arya tells him that one day she'll tell him the real reasons why things ended up like this. She's got her own secrets to share. She adds that his clumsiness is actually part of his charm. It's a genuine compliment that catches him off guard. Washio admits he lied. He knew he was going to help her from the start. There's only one thing left for him to do. He reaches out to the capsule, realizing that even if she's an automaton, she clearly has a heart. He can't ignore that. The note from her old master makes one final request, for the new master to give her a new name and lots of love. It's a touching plea from beyond the grave. Washio takes her hand, offering a sincere smile, the kind of look he's rarely shown to anyone else. He's ready to take on the mission. Washio leans into the capsule with a soft expression, greeting the girl as Alice. He tells her that her new morning will be filled with light and hope, inviting her to step out into the world with them. The girl's eyes widen as she processes the name Alice. She agrees to update her identity, and then looks at Washio, asking if he is her new master. He confirms it a bit awkwardly, hoping she likes the name he chose. Before the moment can get too serious, Arya jumps in and grabs Washio's arm, beaming with pride. She introduces him to Alice not just as a master, but as their reliable teacher, Washio-sensei. Alice repeats his name softly before formally approving him as her new master in her internal system. As she offers a polite greeting, Washio quickly tells her there's no need for such formal titles. Principal Rimnoa is floored that Washio actually found a legendary grimoire and an ancient automaton in that basement. He can barely believe his luck, but Washio just plays it cool while the principal has a mini meltdown. Of course, the principal immediately takes credit, claiming he's a rank A professor and knew exactly what was down there all along. Arya jumps on the chance to make the book their official faction research project, and a bewildered Washio just goes along with it. Looking at his new squad, Washio realizes he's ended up with some pretty exceptional people. Arya and Claudia seem pretty happy with the arrangement too, but Alice is quick to point out that she's an automaton, not a student. Regardless, Principal Rimnoa makes it official. The Ghost Tower is now the headquarters for the Washio faction. Moving into a haunted tower isn't exactly what the girls had in mind, though. Arya tries to lighten the mood by saying the ghost she met was actually a nice guy. She mentions they had a nice chat while everyone else was busy being terrified, but Alice doesn't seem convinced. Alice notes that the principal has already taken the ghost into custody, so they won't be seeing him again anyway. While the tower gets a much-needed renovation, the girls decide to head out and bond. Alice wants to stay by her master's side, but the others drag her along for some quality girl time. A bit later, Alice returns to the tower to check on how the repairs are going. Only now, she swapped her tank top for a full-on maid outfit, much to everyone's surprise. She claims this is the most logical attire for serving her master properly. Arya thinks it's the cutest thing ever, and even Washio has to admit she looks adorable. Alice's internal sensors might be spiking, but she insists she doesn't have the capacity to blush or smile. Washio tells her she should keep her distance, since a construction site is no place for a maid. He tries to help with the heavy lifting, but the girls aren't having it. Between two monster girls and a high-tech automaton, a few massive logs are no problem for them. Washio's starting to think he can really rely on this team for the manual labor. Suddenly, Alice's combat sensors go off, and she prepares to eliminate a threat to her master. Her arm transforms into a literal cannon and blasts a falling rock into dust. Washio and the workers are left shaking as Alice casually reports a successful elimination. She shifts her arm back and immediately moves in to check if Washio is still in one piece. Washio tries to play off his near-death experience, while Arya watches them with a side-eye of pure jealousy. He's definitely not used to this much physical attention from a girl. Alice just stares back with those blank, analytical eyes. They eventually get back to work, but Washio's day is about to take a turn for the worse. It turns out he's officially being kicked out of his apartment because the landlady's son wants him gone. With no money and nowhere to go, Washio is officially homeless and stuck on the street with his bags. Arya sees a golden opportunity and immediately offers up her room as a place to stay. Not to be outdone, Claudia steps in with a much more suggestive offer of hospitality. Washio thinks it's totally inappropriate for a teacher to crash in a student's room, but the girls aren't taking no for an answer. Arya leans in close, asking if he's getting nervous about the idea of them being alone. She starts describing how they can just talk and lie in the same bed together, making Washio's heart race. He tries to shut it down before things get too weird, but the girls are persistent. Claudia doubles down, saying she wouldn't mind at all if things got a little special between them. Alice just watches the whole drama unfold with her usual silent intensity. Feeling cornered, Washio tries to bluff and says he has 100 other friends he could stay with, but the girls aren't buying it for a second. Principal Rimnoa isn't exactly feeling the holiday spirit, flat out refusing to help his colleague. Washio tries to play the old schoolmates card, but the principal isn't moved in the slightest. He's quick to remind everyone that there's a world of difference between a rank A and a rank E professor. Apparently, even being in the same room as someone at the bottom of the ladder makes the principal feel physically ill. With a smug smirk, he tells Washio that if he's that desperate for a place to sleep, the balcony is always available. Next thing you know, Washio is actually out on the balcony, kneeling in defeat while Alice just watches. Arya and Claudia aren't going to stand for this kind of disrespect, though. They immediately swoop in to save their teacher, though their solution involves him crashing in one of their rooms instead. Alice's mechanical hand tenses up as she watches the group dynamic shift. She doesn't seem too happy about the girls trying to stake their claim on her master. Eventually, Washio decides it's better to just stay in his own space from the start, and Alice couldn't agree more. He finally settles in for the night and bids Alice a good night. As Alice powers down in her pod, she returns the sentiment with her usual mechanical politeness. As soon as Washio closes his eyes, the peace is shattered by something dark. He's trapped in a vivid nightmare, sweating as his past starts to haunt him. A massive, terrifying silhouette looms over him in the darkness of his mind. The dream is violent, filled with flashes of light and deep-seated pain. It all centers around a colossal, horned monster that seems to be a permanent scar on his memory. Washio's eyes snap open as he's jolted back to reality. But he's not alone. Alice has detected his distress and is right there, hugging him tight. She's practically lying on top of him, providing a literal human shield against the shadows. A terrified Washio demands to know what on earth she's doing in his bed. She simply explains that she sensed his nightmare and decided a hug was the best way to neutralize the fear. Her eyes glow with a strange light as she processes his racing heart rate. When he tries to pull away, she just holds on tighter, insisting they stay like this just a little longer. She promises to always be by his side so he can sleep in peace, which only makes Washio more flustered. He tries to convince her that everything is fine, but the tension in his face says otherwise. He stares into the dark, trying to make sense of the situation. When it hits him, she's warm. It's a soft, comforting heat he didn't expect from a machine. For the first time in forever, the fear fades, and Washio finally drifts off into a deep, peaceful sleep. The peace lasts exactly until morning, when Arya and Claudia come barging in. They find the two of them still tangled together in bed, and they are absolutely horrified. Alice just stares at them, completely unfazed by their sudden arrival. The girls are immediately suspicious, grilling Washio on exactly what went down overnight. They start hurling accusations of disappointment and shame, barely letting him get a word in. Washio tries to be the voice of reason, pointing out that Alice is a literal machine and it's not what it looks like. Alice pipes up to confirm that yes, she's an automaton and definitely not human. But then she drops a bombshell. Apparently, she's been equipped with reproductive functions. The news sends Arya and Claudia into a total spiral of shock and embarrassment. Meanwhile, back at the academy, Principal Rimnoa is actually wondering if Washio managed to find a place to crash. Arya is clearly feeling the pressure, her eyes narrowing as she thinks of a new plan. She immediately tries to stake her claim by inviting Washio to lunch, but Alice is already one step ahead with a meal ready to go. In the hallways, the gossip is already spreading about just how close Washio has gotten to his trio of monstrous students. Arya seems to be taking the rumors to heart, standing tall with a look of quiet intensity that has the other students on edge. Life at the academy continues with Washio leading his class through another lecture, though the atmosphere is anything but normal. Arya is far from focused on her schoolwork, her mind completely occupied by a burning desire to make her teacher look at her the way he looks at the others. She's so lost in her schemes to capture his heart that she doesn't even realize she's being called out for her lack of attention. Arya takes a moment to check herself out. She and Claudia are standing around, but Arya's uniform is definitely not up to code. She watches Washio from a distance with a strangely intense expression. Meanwhile, the teacher is losing his mind trying to translate some ancient gibberish. He's stuck on a language and wonders if he should just ask a linguistics expert for help. Eventually, he gives up and face plants onto his desk, while Arya lurks by the door. She walks in looking like a completely different person, uniform loose and trying to act all mature. Washio can barely focus on his work with her hovering over him like that. She leans in close to check on him, but it's pretty obvious she's got an ulterior motive. The poor guy starts sweating bullets, wondering why the room suddenly feels so small. Claudia eventually walks in and asks Arya if she's feeling okay. Arya doesn't even answer. She just keeps leaning in closer to her sensei. She's going full seductress mode, fanning her shirt to show off a bit. Claudia just watches the train wreck happen, clearly not buying the act. Arya keeps complaining about the heat, acting like she's about to melt. Washio is completely flustered, asking why she's suddenly so bothered by the temperature. She realizes the mature lady act is just making him confused instead of excited. Time for a change of plans. She decides to try imitating Alice's approach instead. Without warning, she grabs Washio and pulls his head right against her chest. She tells him he needs to stop overexerting himself and just rest for a bit. Arya is internally screaming with embarrassment, but she's committed to the bit. Washio just stares blankly at the spell book, wondering when his life got so complicated. Suddenly, the pages of the book start to glow with a blinding light. Before they can react, the entire room is engulfed in a massive magical discharge. Alice walks in carrying a stack of books, looking for her master. She realizes the room is empty, but points out that the teacher is actually right there in the book. It turns out Washio and Arya have been pulled right into the world of the grimoire. Alice calmly explains to the others that they're currently facing a trial inside the book. Deep within the pages, ancient runes are swirling with intense energy. Washio wakes up and tries to make sense of the strange, misty landscape. A giant burst of light fills the sky as the book's consciousness speaks to them. It announces that it's time for a test to see if they're worthy of the 4 stellar spells. And the stakes are high. If they fail the test, they're not coming out alive. Arya is lying unconscious nearby, looking like she took a rough fall. Washio sits up and scans the area, which is covered in a thick, unnatural fog. He quickly checks on Arya to make sure she's doing all right. They both look out into the ruins, realizing they're stuck until they clear the trial. Washio is mostly just stressed about missing his faction's upcoming presentation. Arya spots several dark figures moving through the mist toward them. A group of shadowy monsters armed with spears suddenly emerge from the fog. They're completely surrounded by the hostiles with no clear way to escape. Washio just lets out a tired sigh, calling the whole situation a giant hassle. Washio is feeling the pressure, being attacked from both sides while trying to focus on the immediate threat. Arya takes charge, declaring she's more than enough for opponents at this level. She unleashes a lightning bolt that tears through the shadowy enemies. The monsters are completely disintegrated by her power. Arya continues her assault, while Washio watches her in complete amazement. As she walks forward, Arya realizes something important about their situation. She thinks about how this world is just her and her teacher, like some kind of fantasy. She checks off her victory conditions, feeling like her moment has finally arrived. Arya gets a little too excited thinking about their hands accidentally brushing earlier. She decides to seize the opportunity and get even closer to him. She starts acting coy, telling him she's tired. Arya leans into him, asking if he could carry her. Washio is taken aback by her sudden change in behavior. He asks if something's wrong, offering help if she's in trouble. Arya admits she just wants him to see her as something more than just a student. Suddenly, a massive shadow monster looms behind her, but she's too distracted to notice. She's still pouring her heart out while the monster prepares to strike. Washio grabs her just in time as a massive blade swings down. They barely escape the lethal blow. Arya is left breathless and flustered by the close call. Washio quickly checks to see if she's been hurt anywhere. The shadow monster isn't done yet, looming over them for another attack. Washio tells her to run as another strike comes crashing down. He dives and pins her to the ground to keep her safe from the impact. He apologizes for being so rough, hoping she isn't injured. Arya is completely stunned by his protective instinct and their physical proximity. Their hearts are both racing as they stay frozen in the moment. Arya whispers to him while they're still on the ground. The sound of their heartbeats is practically all they can hear. She looks at him with an intense, vulnerable gaze. Washio is sweating, feeling the intense tension between them. Arya starts laughing nervously, trying to play off the awkwardness. Washio points out that they really need to deal with the giant monster first. Arya admits that being proactive just isn't her usual style. She asks him how he actually sees her. She begs him to tell her what he really thinks of her. The shadow giant roars, completely ignored by the two of them. Washio shouts that this really isn't the right time for this conversation. He creates a magic shield around them while thinking about how Arya doesn't realize her own charm. He looks at her and says she's one of his most precious students. He tells her that everyone has their own unique beauty, and she doesn't need to copy anyone else. He smiles and mentions a famous saying about blooming in one's own way. Washio continues his poetic metaphor, telling Arya that just as different flowers have their own beauty, the same applies to women. He remains focused on protecting her while the massive monster looms over his shield. Arya is left speechless, her eyes wide as she takes in his sincere words. For a moment, the danger around them seems to fade away. Her gaze is fixed on him, reflecting the deep impact his encouragement has had on her. Suddenly, Washio starts overthinking, worrying that his explanation was too long and clumsy. Behind him, Arya can't help but let out a little giggle at his sudden awkwardness. Arya leans in with a playful smile, telling him that his lack of conciseness is actually one of his charms. Washio is caught off guard, wondering if she's making fun of him or being serious. Washio reflects on how he really should have seen all this coming sooner. Instead of just walking like a normal person, Arya is straight up princess carrying him. She says it's way faster this way, but he's not so sure about the dignity part. She isn't kidding about the speed, though. They're zipping through the tower depths like it's nothing. Washio's just holding on for dear life, wondering how his life as a teacher led to this. Being carried by your own student is a level of embarrassment he wasn't quite ready for. Arya looks back with a smug little blush, while Washio is just red-faced and dying inside. They finally reach the bottom of the tower, and the trail ends at a dead end. It's a massive stone door covered in runes and a giant skull. Washio tries pushing, but it doesn't budge. Feeling silly, he jokingly shouts, "Open sesame." Total silence follows. He waits for a second, feeling like a complete idiot for even trying. But then, the runes actually start to hum and glow. To his absolute shock, the massive stone starts sliding open. Arya is impressed, asking if that was some kind of secret unlocking spell. Inside the room is a single pedestal holding a blindingly bright orb of magical energy. Washio steps into the light, wondering what he's actually stumbled onto here. He can feel a powerful presence radiating off the orb as he gets closer. Suddenly, a giant snake head lunges out from behind the pedestal, screaming at him to back off. Washio nearly jumps out of his skin. A silver-haired girl steps out, but it's the snake head growing from her hair that's doing all the talking, challenging them to a fight. The girl herself looks timid and completely overwhelmed by her own aggressive snakehead. The snakehead isn't having any of the girl's hesitation, telling her to speak up and act like a guardian. It turns its attention back to Washio and Arya, yelling that this isn't a show and they better prepare themselves. The girl finally gives in, telling them she's ready to do her duty. Her eyes suddenly flare with a brilliant, blinding light. Washio tries to shield his eyes, but it's too late. When the light fades, he looks over and finds Arya completely turned to stone. He panics, calling out to his petrified student. The snakehead tells him to calm down. She's not dead, just petrified so they can talk without her hearing. It turns out he wants to make a deal. The snake explains that if he wants the magic, he has to pay a price. Washio listens intently, knowing there's always a catch with this much power. He asks what kind of price a magic orb could possibly demand. The snakehead leans in and says the cost is Arya's feelings for him. Washio is stunned. He didn't even think she had feelings for him. He looks back at the stone statue of Arya. He's been so focused on being a teacher that he never noticed the way she looked at him. He starts laughing it off, thinking there's no way a girl like her would actually have a crush on an old guy like him. But then the weight of the choice hits him. If he breaks the spell and takes the magic, those feelings will just disappear. He's worried it'll ruin her life or change who she is, but the snakehead just sighs at his stubbornness. The snakehead starts to get casual, calling him old man and telling him he doesn't understand. It admits it's actually a huge fan of love stories. These guardians apparently feed on emotions, and sweet innocent crushes are its absolute favorite snack. It goes off on a weird tangent about liking the thrill of NTR or kids sneaking around at night. Washio is just disturbed. He tries to play it off as a joke, but the snake is dead serious. It points out that girls Arya's age often fall for older guys they look up to. Washio tries to convince himself it's just a misunderstanding because she's young. He can't believe his student actually has a thing for him. Washio tries to convince himself that Arya will eventually realize it was just a passing fancy when she grows up. The guardian snakehead agrees to the deal, letting Washio gain the magic and escape from the tower. Back in reality, he's still mulling over whether he made the right call. We shift to the faction exchange meeting, where Principal Rimnoa is finishing up his research presentation. The audience is already eating it up, praising the principal for increasing fireball range by 30%. Next on the list is the Washio faction. The crowd starts gossiping about the weak E-rank teacher and his 3 new students. Washio nervously steps up to the mic, announcing that they've been researching lost magic from ancient tomes. Arya and Claudia are right there on the sidelines, cheering him on with plenty of energy. Suddenly, a massive magic circle erupts on the floor, terrifying the other professors who don't know what's coming. Washio unleashes the research result, 4-star meteor magic. A terrifying evil dragon, Kapaivara, is suddenly resurrected in a burst of dark energy. Dark magic starts flooding the entire hall as the seal is broken. But in an instant, the dragon is completely obliterated. Washio is left panting, barely able to stand. The audience is stunned into silence. Since everything happened so fast, they think the spell was just a dud. Washio tries to play it cool, but he's clearly shaken by the power he just unleashed. Principal Rimnoa looks at the empty spot where the dragon was, noting that an invisible hero must have taken it out. He laughs it off, telling everyone not to blame Washio for the failure since he's only in E-rank. Washio watches the A-rank elite walk away, feeling like he's in a completely different world. Arya and Claudia are fuming over how rude the principal was being. Later, Arya approaches him, but she seems a bit dazed. She admits that she can't remember a single thing that happened during the trial in the tower. Washio is worried that he really did sacrifice her memories for power. We see a flashback of the Guardian watching them leave, hoping he can handle the spell properly. Washio had actually refused the deal, saying that taking away her feelings just didn't feel right. The Guardian was so impressed by his kindness that she decided to give him the magic for free. She watches him walk away, still a little worried about the old man. Now it's time for the faction network party, and a buffet is officially open. The other professors are mocking the Washio faction while stuffing their faces with free food. Everyone is crowding around the handsome Principal Rimnoa, praising his results and his looks. But the guys in the back are way more interested in seeing what the monster girls are wearing. And man, they do not disappoint. Arya and Claudia step out, looking like absolute goddesses. The crowd is floored by their new outfits. They've completely stolen the spotlight. Claudia isn't letting the attention get to her head. She's too busy enjoying the food. She happily digs into a plate of meat, telling Washio how amazing it tastes. Washio points out that she's making a mess and tells her to try and stay tidy. Claudia just gives him a flirty look and asks if he'll wipe it off for her. Washio is completely flustered, which just makes the people around him even more jealous. Professor Frederick approaches, creepily praising Claudia's octopus legs in her pure white dress. Suddenly, Alice appears in her maid outfit, moving with mechanical precision. She brings a meal directly to Washio, calling him master in front of everyone. The other teachers start whispering about how immoral it is for him to be served like this. Claudia ignores them all and leans in close, asking Washio if he can tell what's different about her today. As Arya clings to Washio, Alice bluntly points out that Arya's chest has shrunk by 10 centimeters. Washio is caught off guard, while Arya looks completely flustered by the observation. Claudia chimes in, admitting that she had previously padded her figure to impress Washio, but she's decided to just be herself from now on. Washio is left wondering why he's being forced to have such an awkward conversation. Alice then turns her attention to Washio, asking if he prefers larger chests and offering to modify her body accordingly. Washio quickly shuts down the idea, telling her to take better care of herself. As the group continues to stand out at the party, Alice observes them with her usual neutral expression, seemingly unbothered by the attention they're drawing. Feeling overwhelmed by the flashy environment, Washio steps out onto a balcony to smoke and clear his head. He reflects on how much he dislikes high society events like this. He leans against the railing, looking out over the balcony as he tries to find a moment of peace amidst the noise of the party behind him. The chapter ends with a shift in tone, showing the lively party above and a group of mysterious, hooded figures below, hinting at a darker plot unfolding in the shadows. Washio is sweating bullets. This party is already proving to be way too much for him. The Guardian of Magic approaches, surprising him by being out of her book. An arrogant voice nearby mocks her, calling her a pig in lipstick. Out on the balcony, the Guardian says she's content just watching the party from a distance. She admits crowded rooms make her anxious enough to vomit. Nearby, Julius Frederick asks how the automaton is holding up. The Guardian warns him that while powerful, she's naive and easily tricked. She asks him to make her happy. A moment later, Frederick is standing there like a statue. The girl realizes she accidentally petrified him again. Alice and Claudia arrive. Alice notes she's just checking the status of her master's handiwork while Arya is confused by the Guardian's outfit. Suddenly, Molly Blime runs up to Washio, begging for help because she's still being chased by a monster. Watching from the sidelines, an elven professor notes how well Washio gets along with the monster girls. He narrows his eyes, clearly not having given up on taking over that homeroom for himself. A mysterious boy with a mole under his eye offers to lend a hand with that particular goal. Back at the tower, Arya excitedly shows off the Washio dormitory. The ruined ghost tower is now a pristine mansion. Despite the renovation, Washio is still jumping at shadows. Alice assures him she'll protect him for whatever pops up. They head inside to find a luxury interior. Washio is blown away by the size of the new bathroom. Arya mentions wanting to soak together like they used to, but Washio points out that's definitely not ethical anymore. Alice walks in and offers to wash his back instead, leaving Arya and Claudia stunned. Alice bluntly tells Claudia to back off. Scrubbing the master is her designated job. Arya breaks the tension by suggesting they head upstairs to check out the rooms. The rooms are massive. Arya immediately suggests sharing one with Washio, just the two of them. Alice shuts that down instantly, declaring that the master will be staying with her in the basement. The two start a tug-of-war with Washio's arm until he begs them to let go. Arya eventually gives in, deciding she'll just take a single room for herself. To form a faction, they need 3 members, so they introduce Molly Blime. She's so plain she goes by Mop-chan. Molly apologizes for being forgettable, while Arya is just annoyed she stayed hidden for so long. With the logistics settled, Arya and Molly head off to start unpacking their things. Claudia and Arya share a brief, knowing look. The group walks through the quiet halls of their brand new dormitory. Arya asks Claudia if she's actually jealous of the robot girl. Claudia dismisses it, since Alice is just an automaton. Arya points out that Alice claims to have reproductive functions, which is definitely a cause for concern. Claudia stays cool. She's confident Washio isn't that easily swayed, and they've got the benefit of history. Claudia reminds her that their real competition is the other students Washio has helped in the past. She tells Arya she better come up with a better plan than just using her looks. Arya isn't worried, thinking her charm is more than enough to win. Claudia just smirks. She's determined to be the one who ends up with the sensei. They start looking at the actual sleeping arrangements in the mansion. While Arya has a standard bed, Claudia has an entire canopy setup brought from her family's estate. Total rich girl move. Molly sits in her modest room, just hoping she can fit in with all these monster girls. A memory of a giant, scaly tail sweeping through a village starts to surface. Years ago at a bar, some rowdy guys were giving the waitress a hard time. A younger Washio stepped in as the bouncer, telling the guys to leave the girl alone and take their business elsewhere. Before things can get violent, a massive blast of fire erupts right in the guys' faces. The thugs realize they've picked a fight with a monster and scatter as fast as they can. Years ago, Washio thanked the little monster girl for saving him, while she just thought he was a pathetic old man. Back in the present, Washio gets a very loud wake-up call as a certain monster girl pounces on him, followed by Alice announcing breakfast is ready. Later at school, Washio greets Professor Rimnoa, who doesn't look particularly thrilled to see him. In a faculty office, Washio managed to make it on time for once, much to the surprise of his colleagues. Rimnoa asks if his morning was spent being woken up by monster girls and robots. Washio's face tells him he hit the nail on the head. The elven professor warns him to keep things professional and avoid any inappropriate behavior. Rimnoa doubles down, saying Washio's eternal E-rank brain probably can't grasp common sense. Washio tries to remind him he's actually rank D now. Rimnoa just dismisses it, claiming he's only giving advice as a fellow colleague. Washio is genuinely shocked that someone as stern as Rimnoa would actually offer him advice. Just then, Professor Julius shows up with a smile, mentioning that the transfer student he talked about has finally arrived. Julius is surprised Washio didn't know, since he asked Rimnoa to pass along the message. Washio just sighs, figuring it was another prank. Then he sees her, a tall, imposing girl with silver gray hair and a massive dragon tail. Washio is completely caught off guard. The new girl, Draco, is glaring at him with enough intensity to make him break out in a cold sweat. Julius introduces her as Draco, the same monster girl who helped Washio out all those years ago. Washio can't believe it. He remembers her as just a sleepy little lizard, but she's grown into a formidable dragon humanoid. Julius confirms she'll be joining his class, which means Washio will have 3 monster girls to manage now. Julius waves goodbye and wishes Washio luck with his new student. Draco stands there silently, keeping her sharp eyes fixed on her new teacher. Washio tries to break the ice, telling her it's been a while and complimenting how much she's grown. Instead of a friendly response, Draco just gives him the cold shoulder. Draco clicks her tongue in annoyance, leaving Washio wondering if he said something wrong. He figures it's just typical high school girl behavior, but Draco's attitude is definitely colder than he expected. Inside the classroom, Arya spots the newcomer and immediately jumps her, excited to see her old friend. Draco is less than thrilled about the physical affection and tells Arya to get off her. Arya keeps hugging her, mentioning how jealous she is of Draco's height and other features. Draco just looks miserable. The two exchange a long, meaningful look that suggests they've known each other for a long time. Meanwhile, Julius watches the interaction from the hallway with a suspicious little smirk. Washio starts his biology lecture, explaining how monsters have their own food chain, with dragons sitting at the absolute top. The human students are hyped, talking about how cool dragons are and how worth it the class is. Draco just stares at the back of Washio's head while he writes on a chalkboard. The kids start whispering about Draco's diet, wondering if she actually eats chimeras like the textbook says. Draco lets out a massive yawn, accidentally breathing a bit of fire and scaring the daylights out of the kids sitting behind her. Washio has to step in and tell the class to settle down and focus on the lesson. Draco leans back in her chair and asks him a blunt question. What exactly is a monster? The rest of the class is baffled that she's asking something so basic, but Draco admits she's been sleeping through her other classes. Washio takes it in stride and explains that monster is a general term for creatures that suddenly appear during the Great Dark Night. He explains that monsters usually have lower intelligence than humans, but still develop their own complex social structures. He mentions the Demon King as the peak of that structure, though he tells Draco she'll have to ask her history teacher for more details. Draco listens to the explanation about suddenly appearing creatures with a very skeptical expression. Suddenly, she slams her hands on the desk and asks why they have to keep calling monsters dumb. Draco leans in close, her eyes narrowing as she asks if he realizes how disrespectful that sounds to her kind. She bares her fangs, giving Washio a terrifying look at the apex predator sitting in his classroom. Washio is completely flustered, stuttering that he doesn't even know how to respond to such a serious accusation. Draco's intimidating facade suddenly cracks as she lets out a little snort. She breaks into a wide, mischievous grin, showing off her sharp fangs. Washio just stands there, totally bewildered by the sudden change in her mood. Draco laughs, telling him she was just messing with him, and that his panicked reaction was totally lame. The rest of the class is still recovering from the shock, whispering about how intense the dragon's presence was and how massive her wings looked. A couple of human students are visibly shaken, sweating as they realize just how dangerous Draco could be. Washio tries to regain control of the situation, awkwardly ending the lesson for the day as he wipes sweat from his forehead. As the students head out, Draco sticks her tongue out at her teacher in a playful, childish gesture of defiance. Washio sighs to himself, realizing that Draco is going to be a completely different kind of handful compared to Arya and Claudia. Suddenly, Arya bursts through the door in a panic, shouting that something terrible has happened to Claudia. Washio rushes to the nurse's office to find Claudia sitting there with a bandaged arm and one of her tentacles lying severed on the floor after an accident in alchemy class. Claudia tearfully apologizes to Washio for being so clumsy and causing trouble. She looks absolutely devastated, confessing her fear that she might get expelled from the academy for her failure. Washio leaves the office with a heavy heart, determined to find a way to help his student. Meanwhile, Draco watches from the shadows, holding a mysterious black book and noting that everything is progressing according to plan. Washio tries to keep things light, telling Claudia that explosions are just part of the job in alchemy. He promises her she's not getting expelled over a little accident. Claudia looks completely out of it, barely even registering his words. Suddenly, someone calls out to Washio from the side. He double-checks to see if she's actually hurt anywhere. She just gives a weak smile and says she's fine. Washio tells her to take the rest of the day off to recover, though he still expects a written apology by tomorrow. As they walk through the halls, Arya catches up with him to talk about what happened. Arya asks him point-blank if he noticed how weird Claudia was acting during a lesson. She explains that while Claudia was making small mistakes, she started completely zoning out partway through the experiment. Arya's gut is telling her it wasn't just a simple case of her being distracted. Back in the classroom, Claudia stares off into space, looking heavy with guilt. Meanwhile, Washio gets summoned to the principal's office. Noah and the principal are already there, waiting for him with a grim vibe. Noah acts all concerned, reminding him that as the instructor, he's the one responsible for the fallout. The door flies open as an angry father storms in, screaming at the top of his lungs. The guy grabs Washio by the collar, demanding to know why his daughter's face was burned during class. He's absolutely losing it, telling them to bring the person who caused the injury in right now, so he can punch them. Washio doesn't fight back. He just bows and offers a deep apology, taking full blame for the incident. The PDA president cuts in, saying the real problem isn't just the accident, but the monster girl involved. She wants to skip the pleasantries and get straight to the point. With a cold look, she demands that Washio be fired immediately. Noah then slides an anonymous letter across the desk, looking way too satisfied with himself. At the same time, Claudia is back with the other students, showing them how her octopus legs have already fully healed. The other kids are whispering and staring, clearly freaked out by her monstrous abilities. Arya and Alice stand nearby, feeling the hostility from the crowd starting to boil over. Frederick approaches them, asking if the rumors are true. Did they really cause the explosion on purpose? The girls are caught off guard as he brings up an even darker rumor about Washio blowing up a monster facility in the past. Another student mocks them, saying the shocked silence just proves that Washio is a criminal and they're his accomplices. Noah reads the letter aloud. It claims Washio once murdered the staff at a protection facility and kidnapped young monsters. Washio stays silent, his jaw tight, as he listens to the malicious lies being read as facts. Outside the office, Arya overhears the insults and begins to lose her composure. Her gaze turns ice cold, all traces of her usual calm disappearing. Her spider limbs burst out and a massive, terrifying skull manifests behind her, sending Frederick crawling away in pure terror. Washio suddenly appears and grabs her arm, telling her to stop before she makes things even worse. Claudia and Alice look on, stunned by the intensity of Arya's rage and Washio's quick intervention. The surrounding students are more terrified than ever, whispering about how dangerous monsters can be when they're riled up. The elf teacher, Noah, watches the unfolding disaster with a stoic, unreadable expression. Noah gives a small, predatory smile, clearly pleased with how the situation is playing out. He pushes even further, demanding discipline for the girls as well since they're under Washio's influence. The principal makes his decision. Washio and the girls are to be placed under house arrest until the investigation is over. They're confined to their dormitory, the ghost tower now feeling more like a prison than a home. Outside, the gossip is relentless, with people now convinced the girls have been brainwashed by their teacher. Noah stares out the window, looking triumphant as he admires a flower in the Kamba's office. He tells Rimno that once the background check is done, Washio will be stepping down for good. He suggests Rimnoa take over as the new homeroom teacher, asking if he has any problems with that. Rimno looks conflicted, explaining that his request was only to change teachers, not to run Washio out of the school with malicious rumors. This whole thing has spiraled way out of his control. Noah just smiles, acting surprised that Rimnoa would actually care about the ethics of the situation. Rimnoa stares him down, his expression hardening. He's not here for the games Noah is playing. He reminds Noah that they are supposed to be educators, and warns him to stop dragging the students into his schemes. Noah scoffs, muttering about how difficult elves are to deal with, and how he can't stand their self-righteousness. Dora remains silent, her arms crossed as Noah goes on about how the rumors are spreading like wildfire, and how perfect the plan is working. Noah gets annoyed by her lack of response, calling her an ill-mannered child. He tells her that her attitude only makes Washio look even more unfit to be a teacher, so she might as well keep it up. Dora stares at him with those sharp dragon eyes, her patience clearly wearing thin. He leans in close and asks her if she hates Washio or if it's the other monster girl she can't stand. Noah starts waxing poetic about emotions, asking her what she thinks is the most beautiful feeling in the world. With a twisted grin, he says it's despair, the exact moment the light fades from someone's eyes as they lose all hope. Dora just looks at him like he's lost his mind, telling him his stories never make any sense. Noah just shrugs, calling her a fool. Back at the ghost tower, the silence is heavy as the sun begins to set. Alice enters Washio's room with a tray, offering him some hot milk and honey to help him relax. She starts explaining the chemical benefits of milk and honey for serotonin production, but Arya just stares at her, completely confused. Arya notices Washio is just sitting there in the dark, sulking like a kid. She tells him to just say something if he's bothered. She even offers to solve his problems for him, but Washio remains quiet, his eyes hidden in shadow. Alice sets the tray down, her expression softening as she looks at her master. She asks him if he'd finally be willing to share something about his past. Washio just sighs and tells her maybe someday. Alice accepts the answer and bids him good night as she leaves the room. Washio lies in bed, staring at the ceiling as memories start to flood back. We're drifting into a flashback of how this all started. He remembers the day he was first summoned, looking completely out of place in his business suit. A group of mages in white robes were cheering, celebrating their success in summoning a hero from another world. Washio was totally confused, wondering if it was some kind of elaborate prank or cosplay event. A girl in a white dress leaned in and asked for his name. He gave his real name, Makoto Washio, while looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. The girl seemed completely enamored with him, while Washio was just weirded out by the whole situation. She begged him to use his incredible power to protect their nation from monsters and lead them to victory. Washio's face went pale. Fighting monsters? He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Back in the present, Arya is thinking to herself that even if Claudia doesn't realize it, Washio is definitely sulking about his past. She wonders if they're really going to be okay being stuck in this room together for days on end. Alice pleads with Arya, asking if she knows anything at all about their master's history that she could share. The story goes back to when Washio was known as the Golden Eagle, the highest-ranking mage ever summoned. He was a hero who saved monsters on the battlefield. But in reality, Washio was terrified. He kept screaming that he was just a regular salaryman with zero combat experience. A high-ranking official explained that their kingdom, Paradisio, had been under attack for 5 years, and they were desperate for a savior. Washio begged them to send him back to Japan because he had work tomorrow and his boss would kill him, but they weren't listening. They had high hopes for him, the hero who would finally turn the tide of the war. He was immediately thrown into the deep end, seeing terrifying beasts locked in cages all around the castle. He lay on his bed in the castle, wallowing in despair over the fact that he was actually trapped in another world with no way out. He tried to tell himself there was no point being pessimistic, but the reality of fighting monsters was starting to sink in. Eventually, he resolved to make it work, psyching himself up to face this new life head-on. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. A young, animal-eared soldier named Skara walked in, bringing him some tea before bed. Skara stands at attention, introducing himself with high energy as a second-class soldier assigned to be Washio's personal support. He starts listing all the ways he can help, from massages to finding the best restaurants. Washio watches him, wondering if this eager kid is taking the support role a bit too far. Skara practically vibrates with excitement, clearly waiting for a grand, heroic command. Washio just sighs, feeling the pressure of the kid's expectations. Washio finally asks for a restaurant recommendation, sparking a montage of their time together. Despite the chaos of his new life, a small, genuine smile starts to find its way back to Washio's face. Skara gives Washio a shoulder massage, thanking him for all the hard work he's put in. They talk about the big operation tomorrow to reclaim the city. Washio promises he won't screw this one up. Washio lies back, staring off into the distance. He asks if the battlefield is scary. Skara admits it's terrifying when your life is constantly on the line. The support soldier promises to protect him since Washio is the one on the front lines. Skara puffs out his chest, acting all chivalrous. Washio asks to drop the formal honorifics since they're friends now. The cat-eared boy is stunned. He didn't expect to be considered friend. He gets a bit overexcited and asks if he can call him Washio-san from now on. They plan to grab food together after the mission. Washio jokes that sounds like a massive red flag. Scar has no clue what that means. Washio just says it's some internet slang from his world. The scene shifts to the nightmare of the battlefield. A massive explosion rocks the area. Soldiers look on as the smoke clears, seeing the destruction. A fractured memory of Scar's smile flashes in Washio's mind. His eye goes wide with shock. Left gasping in ruins, the weight of the loss hits him hard. He grips a cloth tightly, making a silent vow. He'll protect the monsters in his friend's place. Back in the present, Arya leans in close, her eyes searching for answers. In the dorms, the girls look up as someone is summoned to the office. The large doors of the principal's office loom over the hallway. Inside, Noah reads an official report about Washio's time in the Magic Corps. He mentions the abduction of 6 monsters. The report claims they were being brainwashed to be used as weapons of war. Noah asks if there's any mistake. Washio just stares at the floor, the room going silent. Memories of a lab and a young octopus-like creature in a tank flash back to him. He doesn't fight it. He admits the report is 100% correct. The faculty members are horrified by the admission. The PDA president points a finger, demanding his immediate dismissal for being a criminal. Washio clenches his fist, but stays silent. Out in the hall, Arya hears the entire exchange. Later at the tower, Dora notices Arya looking especially gloomy. She asks if she's worried about the teacher situation. Arya's expression remains cold and distant. She says it doesn't matter to her what happens to him. Dora can't believe how heartless she's being. Arya's mouth twitches into a small smirk. She suddenly bursts into laughter, her sharp teeth showing. She tells Dora she's being way too overprotective of the old man. Pinning her against the seat, Arya tells her to wake up. Their very existence is what's causing him all this pain. Dora just looks at her, completely confused by the outburst. Washio walks through the hall with a hollow look in his eyes. Julius watches him pass with a smug expression. Arya decides the timing is perfect. She tells Dora they're going to ask him directly and get the real story. Washio looks completely drained, his eyes hollow and dead as he faces his students. He reaches out, tilting Claudia's head up while she stares back at him in total shock. He looked at the monster girls he spent so much time protecting, but his expression doesn't soften one bit. His gaze is cold and distant, hiding whatever pain he's actually feeling. He tells her bluntly that everything that's happening is entirely her fault. He explains that he went through so much trouble to hide his past, but thanks to her, everything is out in the open. Tears stream down Claudia's face as he tells her he regrets ever saving her back then. Without another word, he turns his back and walks away, leaving her devastated in the hallway. Noah watches the scene unfold with a cold, judgmental look on his face. Claudia calls out one last time, but he just tells her it's over and walks off. Outside, news of Washio's firing spreads like wildfire through the academy grounds. Students gossip in the halls, calling him a psycho who brainwashes people for his own gain. Washio carries a box of his few belongings out of the building, looking like a completely defeated man. Noah catches up to him at the entrance. Washio tells him the monster girls are good kids, even if they can be spoiled. The elf teacher stares him down, asking if he really did all those horrible things to his students. Washio doesn't even look back, as he simply confirms that every word of the report is true. Noah is taken aback by the casual admission. He watches the former teacher walk away into exile, declaring that he utterly despises him. The next morning, the classroom feels empty and cold as the bell rings for homeroom. Arya and Claudia sit in silence at their desks, the life drained from their expressions. Noah stands at the front of the room, announcing himself as their new advisor. He informs them that the Washio faction is officially disbanded and that biology class is now under his command. The girls don't even look up, the weight of their grief pinning them to their seats. Noah tells them that sulking won't change anything and orders them to head straight to their first period. Later, in the quiet of the hallway, the elf teacher lets out a heavy sigh of exhaustion. Julius appears behind him with a mocking grin, asking how it feels to finally have monster girls as his students. He holds up a glowing bottle, offering it as a solution to the elf's obvious stress. He explains that it's a taming potion designed to keep monsters submissive and easy to manage. Noah narrows his eyes, refusing the offer and insisting he'll win them over with his own words. Julius just scoffs, thinking that elves and their pride are nothing but a massive hassle. He hands off the classroom logbook, ready to move on to his next scheme. Over at the ghost tower, the girls sit on a spiral staircase, lost in their thoughts. Alice notes that their time here went by in a flash, and now everything just feels sad. Claudia runs her hand over one of Washio's old books, her heart heavy with regret. She thinks about how no one will even use these research notes now that he's gone for good. Suddenly, Frederick bursts through the door, loudly announcing he's there to help his honey bunny pack. The girls look at him with pure annoyance as he gets way too close to Claudia. He claims he'll be the one to heal her broken heart and take care of all her belongings. Instead of getting angry, Claudia just smiles sadly, saying she doesn't want to cause any more trouble for anyone. Frederick is stunned by her reaction, his energetic display faltering as he sees her pain. He clenches his fist, realizing she still believes in Washio despite everything that's happened. He tells them that if they want the truth, they should find it together and clear his name. Arya and Dora look at him, realizing he might actually be serious about helping them. Frederick looks back at the girls with a soft, determined smile, mentioning how much their happiness matters. Alice is far from impressed by his heroic tone, bluntly calling him a cheesy man. Alice clenches her fist in frustration, declaring that the absurd rumors spreading about Washio are completely unacceptable. Arya clutches her chest, admitting that while Washio's words hurt her deeply, she refuses to give up on the truth. She settles into a solemn silence, her eyes fixed on the floor as she commits herself to the plan. The group gathers around the accusation letter, where Frederick points out that identifying a typed sender will be difficult. Arya immediately voices her suspicion of Renoa, but Frederick knows they need more substantial proof. Alice points out a peculiar detail in the text, noting that Julius has a habit of adding unnecessary dots at the end of sentences. The Guardian of Magic's snake head looms over them, cautioning that a typing quirk isn't enough to convict a teacher. Alice looks skeptical, asking for confirmation if Julius is indeed the pharmacology teacher. The snake leans in and sniffs the paper, detecting a faint, unmistakable scent of chemicals lingering on the page. Frederick remains unconvinced by his snake's testimony, which quickly earns him an angry glare from the creature. The snake huffs in indignation, insisting that being a serpent doesn't automatically make it two-faced. With a solid lead to follow, the group gathers outside the entrance to Julius's private research room. They cautiously step inside the cluttered laboratory, which is filled with strange potions and alchemical equipment. Arya's snake familiar is certain. Julius was the one who sent that accusation letter, and the proof has to be in this room. They just need to find the typewriter he used to write it. If it's here, they've got him. Frederick and Arya sneak into the office. Frederick whispers for everyone to keep it down as they start the search. Arya spots the sign on the door, confirming they're in Julius's private space. She urges the others to find something fast. The group starts tearing the place apart. Claudia and Frederick look through the shelves, feeling the weight of doing something so against the rules. Claudia stays focused. She knows they don't have much time before someone notices they're gone. On the desk sits a typewriter. Arya's snake picks up a scent. It's a perfect match for the ink on the letter. Frederick asks to see the accusation letter again to be sure. Relying on smell alone isn't enough to make it stick. They compare the paper to the typewriter keys. The font is a dead ringer. This is the smoking gun they needed. Even the wax seal on the desk matches the one used to close the letter. The physical evidence is starting to pile up. Claudia finds something else hidden away, an old file on Washio's background. The documents tell a different story than the one Julius sold. Washio didn't kidnap those monsters. He rescued them from a legal lab. Arya's snake sniffs the file. It's fresh, written with the same ink Julius used for his lies. Tears well up in Claudia's eyes. Washio really was the hero she always believed he was. Arya isn't celebrating yet. Finding all this damning evidence so easily feels way too convenient. Her instincts are right. Her familiar senses someone approaching. Julius is back. In a hallway, a student tries to stall the professor. She's desperate to buy the others a few more seconds. Julius doesn't even stop. He gives her a cold smile and tells her to ask her questions later. The girl outside is trembling. She couldn't hold him back at all. The door swings open. Julius steps into his office, announcing that it's too late for them now. The students scramble, diving under the heavy furniture just as Julius enters the room. From their hiding spot, they watch his boots move across the floor. He's walking straight toward them. Julius stands over the desk, staring down at his typewriter. He knows exactly what they were looking at. He doesn't move. He just stands there in silence, letting the tension simmer. After a moment, he leaves. The group breathes a sigh of relief, thinking they actually got away with it. Claudia stays low, but she notices a strange gap in floorboards under the cabinet. Arya grabs the evidence. They need to get out of there and show this to the principal immediately. As they reach for the door handle, they're already planning how to restore Washio's honor. But when the door opens, Julius is standing right there waiting for them. He catches them before they can even make a move. He's not even mad. He's impressed they managed to figure out the trick with the ink so quickly. In fact, he admits he made the evidence obvious just to see if they'd take the bait. Julius looks at them like they're just toys in his game. He's completely at ease. The reality of the situation hits them. They didn't uncover a secret. They walked right into a trap. Frederick tries to stand his ground, shouting at Julius to take responsibility for his crimes. Julius ignores him and leans toward Claudia, a dark look in his eyes. Suddenly, Claudia's vision blurs. Her head feels heavy, and her body refuses to obey her. Arya watches in horror as her friends suddenly stop moving. Something is very wrong. She realizes it's mental interference. Everyone is frozen in place, their eyes completely glazed over. Julius moves in, reaching for something. He's done playing around. Arya tries to pull back, but Julius grabs her arm with a firm grip. He explains that his magic doesn't work well on monsters, so he had to catch them while they were still in their humanoid forms. Arya can only watch in horror as Julius casually burns the only proof of Washio's innocence. She's completely frozen, her heart sinking as the letter turns to ash right before her eyes. Every bit of evidence they worked so hard to find is being erased in seconds. Julius looks at her with a twisted, hollow expression, complaining that there just isn't enough to spare in the room yet. He laughs like a madman, calling despair a gift and a privilege for those who are self-aware. To him, it's just a sickness that leads to death, and he's enjoying every second of watching her soul break. He leans in, fascinated by the way monster girls experience despair. He grabs Arya's chin, forcing her to look at him as he demands to see even more of that beautiful, broken expression. Then he pulls out a small, metallic sphere, his eyes gleaming with a dark intent. Arya stares at it, her mind racing to figure out what kind of twisted tool he's about to use next. He gives her a chilling smile, telling her not to worry because the pain will only last a second. In a blur of motion, he activates the device, unleashing a wave of magic that hits her like a physical blow. Arya tries to scream at him to get away, but her voice is already failing her. Her vision begins to fade, and her body goes numb. With her last bit of strength, she tells Claudia to run while she still can. But Julius is already one step ahead, catching Claudia by the back of her head and telling her to just stay still. Arya's massive snake tail lashes out in a desperate, final attempt to help, but it's clear they're already caught. Suddenly, Draco steps into the room, her expression dark and unreadable. She looks at the scene, holding her hand out and suggesting they all go out for a bite to eat. Julius looks over his shoulder, his smirk returning. He tells Draco it's rare for her to ask him out on a date, acting like the chaotic scene behind him isn't even happening. With a sudden snap of his fingers, the magic in the room shifts. The students all flinch as the mental fog Julius cast over them begins to lift. Frederick and the others stumble, their heads spinning as they try to remember what they were even doing. Draco watches them coldly while Arya stares at her in shock, unable to believe she's working with Julius. Draco's reptilian eyes narrow as she warns the students not to stick their necks into this business any further. Claudia isn't backing down. She screams at Draco, demanding to know if she's really okay with letting the person who framed Washio-sensei win. A light bulb goes off in Claudia's head as she realizes exactly what she needs to do. She doesn't wait for an answer. She just turns and bolts, shouting that she's going to find Washio right now. Frederick reaches out to stop her, but she's already gone. Draco just laughs, saying that Octopus-chan hasn't changed one bit since they were kids. Her tone softens as she looks away, whispering that this time, it's their turn to help Washio. Arya stays silent, watching the girl she once considered a friend. Meanwhile, far away from the academy, Washio is living a much quieter life. He walks into his room at the inn, where his automaton maid, Alice, informs him that the bath is finally ready. Alice offers to scrub his back for him, but Washio quickly declines, insisting he can handle himself. She doesn't let up, telling him the human touch is the best way to soothe the tired mind and body. She even goes as far as to mention her reproductive capabilities, leaving Washio completely speechless. He finally snaps, telling her that's quite enough as he tries to keep his composure. The next morning, Washio is back to his mundane routine, focused on making the beds for the guests. He and Alice finish up their chores just in time for the manager to come by and thank them for their hard work. He insists on a quiet, lonely stretch of the old highway, far removed from the drama of the academy. Washio wipes the sweat from his brow, grateful for the peace and quiet, even if the work is exhausting. Washio chats with the manager, joking that his hard work is probably just a result of his youth. The manager laughs it off, reminding him that he's not exactly a teenager anymore, while Washio leans against the stairs, insisting that the quiet life of an innkeeper just suits him perfectly. The manager doesn't seem fully convinced, asking if it's true that he used to be a famous teacher at a prestigious magic academy. Washio just shrugs, claiming this laid-back environment is exactly what he needs. As he gets back to his chores, Washio admits that his time at the academy was draining, especially the heavy burden of being responsible for the futures of so many students. Alice watches them from the side, as the manager mentions that having energetic people around really helps as he gets older. Washio can't help but chuckle as the old man continues to insist he's not that old. With a final word of encouragement, the manager leaves the front desk in Washio's hands and heads back to the kitchen to start on the day's prep. Washio turns to Alice, reiterating how grateful he is for this new life. She looks at him skeptically, questioning if he's being entirely sincere about his newfound passion for hospitality. His expression softens as the conversation shifts to the people he left behind, specifically Lady Claudia and Arya. Alice doesn't hold back, looking him straight in the eyes and asking if he truly regrets his decision to leave the academy. Washio tries to keep his composure, But there's a flicker of sadness in his gaze that he can't quite hide. He quickly denies it, but Alice points out that his eye movements and a bead of sweat tell a completely different story. Finally dropping the act, Washio lights a cigarette and admits that he does have regrets, though mostly about not leaving sooner before his problems could drag the students into danger. He exhales a cloud of smoke, trying to convince himself that he was never cut out for teaching, and that being free from that responsibility is a huge weight off his shoulders. Alice asks if this truly means he intends to cut all ties with Claudia and Arya forever. Washio looks down, acknowledging that while he might have gone overboard and tried to push them away, he still thinks it's the right choice. He gives a small, bittersweet smile, convincing himself that staying out of their lives is the only way to ensure they find the happiness they deserve. Alice looks on with a calm expression, confirming she's ready for whatever comes next. Washio lies in bed, apologizing to his mechanical companion as she vows to stay by his side until the very end. Life at the remote inn is simple, and Washio spends his days sweeping the grounds and keeping things tidy. He suddenly stops mid-sweep, looking over his shoulder as he catches a strange sound behind him. Before he can even react, Claudia lunges out of nowhere and tackles him straight to the ground. She's screaming at him, calling him a stupid old man for running away and leaving him behind. Washio is completely caught off guard as she checks his pockets, demanding to know where he's been. Her anger quickly melts into tears as she asks why he felt the need to lie to them like that. She's sobbing now, the weight of everything finally breaking through her tough exterior. Pinning him to the dirt, she lets out all the hurt he caused by walking away from the academy. Washio tries to calm her down, but she's not having any of it, still holding him in a death grip. Alice eventually wanders over with some tea, casually suggesting it might be time for the girl to let the master go. The mechanical maid is as blunt as ever, noting that it's hard to have a serious talk while he's being strangled. Once they finally settle down, Washio is floored to learn that his background files at the academy were forged. Claudia pulls out a syringe, explaining that Julius tried to inject her with some unknown chemicals. Realizing Julius is behind a much darker plot, Washio finally snaps out his funk and rushes to get ready. He's still a bit banged up from the tackle, and Claudia is just worried she hugged him too tight. There's no time to waste, so Alice tells him to grab on, so they can get moving immediately. She cranks her engines to full throttle, warning everyone to brace for a rough ride. With a massive blast of steam, they launch into the air, leaving the peaceful one behind. They're flying toward the academy at insane speeds, with Claudia barely hanging on for dear life. As they fly, Washio explains that Julius's goal is far more dangerous than simple framing. He tells Alice about the monstral factor, a term that doesn't even exist in her vast database. It's essentially a chemical switch that separates normal creatures from berserk monsters. He's worried that if they don't stop the activation, the girls will lose all control of their aggression. He's finally connected the dots, identifying the man in charge as the high-ranking wizard Silver Crow. It all makes sense now. The drug and the name Julius weren't just a coincidence. Washio beats himself up for not realizing it sooner, or maybe he just didn't want to see the truth. Claudia is stunned, realizing that the horrible research lab they escaped from was his doing. Washio explains that she likely locked those memories away just to protect herself. He admits he was just running away from the ghosts of his own past this whole time. But looking at his students, he knows he can't keep hiding while they're in danger. Alice warns them to hang on tight as she navigates some sharp turns through the clouds. Back at the academy, the other students are cornering Draco, demanding to know her true intentions. They're all shouting at her, but she just stands there, looking completely out of it. Just as they're about to press her for answers, Alice comes screaming down from the sky for a landing. Washio shouts for Draco to run, realizing she's the next target of Julius's twisted game. It's too late, though. Julius is already right behind her, mocking Washio's concern for his students. He treats the girl like nothing more than a puppet, revealing he's been prepping her for this for a long time. He triggers the chemical reaction, and Draco lets out a blood-curdling scream as she begins to transform. Washio screams her name, but Julius has already made his move while the others look on in shock. Draco's teeth sharpen into fangs as she convulses, the dark power taking over her mind completely. Draco smirks, revealing she was just playing along and won't be losing control over some cheap drug. She admits she wanted to handle the whole situation without Washio getting involved, but plans have clearly changed. With the protagonist looking on in confusion, Draco asks the villain if they should settle their score right here. She tells Julius he's completely cornered by the monster girls and their teacher. Arya steps up too, demanding he just give up now that they found the evidence in his office. Washio is still trying to wrap his head around what's happening, while Arya complains he's ruining her dramatic entrance. It turns out Draco was an ally all along, much to the surprise of the other students. She apologizes for keeping them in the dark, explaining she didn't want to put them in danger before revealing her true self. She pulls back her sleeve to show an armband, which the group immediately recognizes as a royal mark. Julius explains that she's actually an enforcer for the Order, a secret group working for the royal family. Draco confirms she came to the academy to investigate Julius for the research he stole 2 decades ago. She mocks the teacher for all his failed injections, thinking she's completely immune to the drug. The other students are horrified to hear just how many times she was experimented on, while she jokes that it only made her scale shinier. Julius explains the agonizing side effects of the chemical trigger, leaving Arya and Frederick deeply concerned. Draco is still riding high on her successful undercover operation, asking the villain how he liked her performance. Julius looks away, admitting that he was completely taken in by her act. But he gets the last word, bringing up a date they supposedly went on and a kiss they shared. Draco immediately panics, screaming at him to stop lying as she tries to maintain her reputation in front of Washio. She tells him to shut up and accept his arrest, but the villain isn't even slightly worried. He claims the activator he pumped into her has only been growing stronger and more unstable every day. With a sinister grin, he declares that the wait is finally over and triggers the final stage of the drug. Draco suddenly clutches her chest as her breathing becomes ragged and her focus begins to slip. Washio tries to rush to her side, but Draco's eyes are already changing into something feral and cold. He calls out her name as she doubles over in pain, the monster within starting to claw its way out. Her eyes turn pitch black as she lets out a soul-shattering scream that echoes across the courtyard. A wave of dark, shadowy energy erupts from her body, blowing everyone back with incredible force. The students can only watch in horror as the academy buildings are enveloped in the strange black substance. Julius looks on with a twisted sense of pride, urging the girl to show him the full extent of her despair. Rimnoa takes charge, telling the panicked crowd to stay calm and evacuate the area immediately. Washio and Claudio watch in disbelief as the black energy twists into a monstrous shape. Her teeth sharpen into jagged fangs as the transformation reaches its peak. A massive beam of destructive energy blasts out of her mouth, leveling everything in its path. Arya screams for her friend to stop, her voice full of desperation as the academy burns. Julius mocks them from the shadows, telling them that their words will never reach her in this state. He issues a challenge to Washio, daring him to keep hiding his true identity while his student transforms. He wants to see the legendary Golden Eagle finally break under the pressure of his own failures. A magic circle glows within his eye, signaling that the hero is finally ready to stop holding back. Washio begs Draco to snap out of it, while Alice prepares for a direct confrontation. Another massive explosion rocks the academy as the berserk dragon continues her rampage. Washio is knocked to the ground by the blast, but Alice is right there to shield him and check for injuries. Despite being battered and bruised, the teacher looks up at the monster with a newfound resolve. He yells for her to come back as the dragon lets out another earth-shaking roar. Arya launches her spider threads, desperately trying to bind Draco's mouth and restrain her before she can cause more damage. She apologizes to her friend, telling her that she needs to go to sleep for her own safety. Draco's jaws are tightly bound, but the raw, monstrous power within her is already beginning to snap the silk. Claudia watches from the sidelines, her octopus tentacles twitching as she remains frozen in shock at her friend's transformation. With a terrifying roar, Draco shreds her restraints and lunges forward, her hands now completely replaced by massive dragon claws. She unleashes a devastating beam of pure energy from her mouth, cutting through the academy's stone towers like they were made of paper. Massive clouds of dust and debris fill the air as the iconic school buildings begin to crumble and burn. The student body, led by the elven student Rimnoa, can only watch in paralyzed fear as the peaceful academy is turned into a war zone. Through the thick black smoke, the silhouette of the berserk dragon girl looms over the wreckage. Draco stands amidst the ruins, her mind completely lost to the primal rage of the dragon blood coursing through her veins. Arya screams for Claudia to run as she sees Draco preparing yet another destructive blast, her eyes filled with tears as she begs her friend to come back. The ground trembles as another pillar of light erupts, signaling the end of the academy if no one intervenes. Arya sinks to the ground, exhausted and heartbroken as she realizes that her strength alone isn't enough to save Draco. But amidst the chaos, Washio stands tall, a strange and powerful aura beginning to crackle around his body. Julius watches with a smug grin, warning the teacher that revealing his true power will draw the kingdom's attention and turn him back into a fugitive. Washio finally stops holding back, summoning his manifestation, a colossal, muscular spirit with an animal skull for a head and a mysterious clock emblem on its chest, as he declares that a true teacher protects his students at any cost.